How cute! Those eyes look just like yours. The nose is probably mine, right? Oh, she's so adorable that I'm worried about her future. I'll divorce my wife soon, so wait for me. I'm going to be a great father. Oh, you silly dad. As I went to the hospital for a regular checkup, I overheard my husband and his lover happily talking while holding their newborn baby. Hiding and listening to their conversation, I felt all the strength drain from my body. My mind went blank, and even after they left, I couldn't move for a while. I had recently found out I was pregnant after undergoing fertility treatments, and I was basking in that happiness. I couldn't see the woman's face clearly, but she seemed younger than me, maybe in her 20s. Was the baby she was holding Nick's child? I don't remember how I got home that day. I didn't cook dinner and stayed locked in my room, thinking alone. If what they said was true, what should I do? I couldn't sleep at all that night. After thinking alone all night, I decided to visit my in-laws the next day. I needed to report everything to Nick's parents. From that day on, shocking facts that I hadn't known were revealed one after another, and my husband ended up in a miserable state. My name is Nancy, a housewife in my 30s. I've had a strong longing for marriage since I was young, and after graduating from college and starting my job, I put a lot of effort into finding a marriage partner. I went to various places, including introductions from acquaintances and group dates, but it was at my first city matchmaking event, invited by a friend, that I met my current husband, Nick. Nick is 3 years older than me, with a plain and quiet demeanor. However, upon closer inspection, I noticed he took good care of his hands and had a well-groomed and clean appearance. When I talked to him, he had a calm way of speaking and was very knowledgeable. He seemed older than his actual age. He didn't seem used to dealing with women, but he was kind, serious about his work, and very gentle. Having only dated men who gave me thrills and seemed a bit dangerous, Nick was a refreshing change and fit my ideal of a marriage partner. Nick also found me different from the women he had dated before and took an interest in me. Since that city matchmaking event, we began to keep in frequent contact. We went out for meals a few times, and since we both wanted to get married, we had a whirlwind romance and got married in about 6 months. Nick's family ran a company that was well known locally. I had thought Nick was just a regular office worker until I learned about this after we decided to get married. His father was the current president, the second generation to hold the position. Nick was also being considered as the next president. When our marriage plans were progressing, I went to Nick's family home to greet them for the first time. Nick's mother warmly welcomed me, sensing my nervousness. However, his father had a stern expression, which made me even more nervous. As we talked about our families over dinner, Nick's father suddenly spoke to me. "Nancy, I don't know what Nick has told you, but we run a company. However, it hasn't been decided that Nick will be the next president. Are you okay with that?" It seemed like he had been worried about this. Perhaps he thought I was only after Nick's money and was wary of me. I don't care about Nick's status or title. I met him, got to know him, and genuinely want to marry him. I love Nick for who he is. I looked straight into his father's eyes as I said this. Hearing my response, the tense atmosphere suddenly changed. His father smiled warmly, something I hadn't seen before. That puts my mind at ease. "Nancy, please take care of Nick from now on." With those words, they welcomed me warmly into their family. Even after our marriage, Nick's parents cared for me, inviting me for meals and to their home, treating me very kindly. Nick's mother, having no daughters, wanted to be close to her daughter-in-law and treated me like her own daughter or sometimes like a friend. I came to love and respect Nick's parents as if they were my own. 5 years passed after Nick and I got married. I was over 30, but we still didn't have any children. Both Nick and I wanted kids, but it just wasn't happening for us. Although we thought we were still young, we suddenly found ourselves in our 30s. Our friends were all busy with childbirth and raising their kids. Feeling increasingly anxious, we decided to undergo fertility treatments. We both got tested and started the process, but it was much harder than expected to balance with work. I had continued working after getting married, but I had to cut back for the treatments. Not wanting to miss our chance, I switched from full-time to part-time and dedicated my free time to the treatments. Nick also made time from his busy schedule to go to the clinic. At first, Nick was supportive, and we both felt positive. But as time went on, a rift began to form between us. I had heard that fertility treatments could strain a marriage, and that was exactly what happened to us. A few years into the treatments, with no success, Nick started sighing heavily every time he saw me when he came home from work. He used to praise my cooking and eat a lot, but now he ate in silence. He began working late more often, and we rarely had meals together. He claimed he had to work on weekends too, so I spent most weekends alone. Nick even asked to sleep in separate bedrooms, saying he needed to rest alone because of work stress. His changing attitude, on top of the long and emotionally draining fertility treatments, left me feeling utterly devastated. Even though we lived together, we hardly saw each other or had conversations. If this continued, there was no way we could focus on fertility treatments. Wanting at least to have dinner together when possible, I would wait for Nick to come home without eating, but there were days he came back late without any notice. "Nick, I cooked dinner and waited for you to come home. It's fine if you're going to be late, but at least let me know." When I couldn't hold back my frustration any longer and expressed my feelings, he responded with an irritated look. "We don't have kids anyway, so you don't need to force yourself to cook dinner. I like to eat what I want when I want. It's no different from eating out if you're just cooking for the two of us. Don't push yourself to cook." He says this with an annoyed look on his face. "Don't have kids, you say? Do you even want children, Nick? In this state, we can't even talk about having kids." Nick sighed loudly and gave me a dismissive look. "I'm exhausted from work every day. Can't I at least relax alone when I'm at home?" He said that and quickly went to his bedroom. From that day, Nick started avoiding me even more, as if he couldn't stand seeing me. However, we still regularly visited his parents together. We often had meals with his parents, so despite the lack of conversation and our strained relationship, we kept up appearances in front of them. His parents never questioned us about not having children, but I sensed they were longing for grandchildren. The lack of comments became its own pressure. I wanted to show my beloved in-laws their grandchild's face and make them happy. Nick would say to his parents, "Sorry, we can't give you a grandchild. It's because she can't have kids. I want to make you happy soon." Nick seemed to think it was entirely my fault we couldn't have children. Even though he went to the hospital with me and heard the explanations about infertility, he blamed me completely. After long years of fertility treatments, my spirit was breaking, and Nick's insensitive comments made me cry uncontrollably. Many times I wanted to give up on having children and stop the treatments. Yet, I wanted to have a child, to see Nick and his parents' happy faces. I believed somewhere in my heart that having a child would improve our relationship. So I continued the painful treatments. One day. "Congratulations, you're pregnant. You've done well." During a routine checkup at the hospital, the doctor told me. I was stunned, unable to believe I was actually pregnant. "Am I really pregnant? Is there a baby in my belly? I can't believe it." As I waited to pay at the hospital, reality started to sink in, and joy welled up inside me. I decided to surprise Nick with the news when he came home from work. I would stop by the supermarket on the way home, cook an extra special dinner, and buy a cake from my favorite bakery, along with some parenting magazines. Thinking about all this, I couldn't help but smile. After paying, I hurried home, but as I was leaving, I saw a familiar figure in the hospital hallway. It was Nick. Why was he at the hospital? He had left home saying he was going to work. Today he said he was going to work when he left the house. Maybe he knew I had a checkup today and came to check on me out of concern. Thinking that, I was about to run to him when I saw Nick approaching a woman holding a newborn, talking to her with a smile I'd never seen before. I quickly hid to avoid being seen. How cute! Those eyes look just like yours. The nose is probably mine, right? Oh, she's so adorable that I'm worried about her future. Oh, you silly dad. But she's the child I've always wanted. I'm really happy. I'll divorce my wife soon, so wait for me. I'm going to be a great father. Let's start living together as a family soon. I'm so happy. Listening to their conversation while hiding, I felt all the strength drain from my body. My mind went blank, and even after they left, I couldn't move from that spot for a while. I couldn't clearly see the woman's face, but she seemed younger than me, maybe in her 20s. Was the child she was holding Nick's? That day, I don't remember how I got home. I didn't make dinner and stayed locked in my room, thinking alone. If what they said was true, what should I do? Thinking about the future made my mind go blank. Of course, I didn't tell Nick about my pregnancy or that I saw him at the hospital. I couldn't sleep at all that night. After thinking all night, I decided to visit my in-laws the next day. I wanted to tell them about my pregnancy. Coincidentally, it was my father-in-law's birthday that day. To celebrate his birthday, company executives were also gathering at their house, and I was invited as well. Nick was supposed to attend too, but he claimed to feel unwell and said he couldn't go. I suspected he went to see the newborn and the woman instead. The birthday celebration was informal and had a homey atmosphere. My father-in-law, who treated his employees like family, was in high spirits, surrounded by his loved ones. During the meal, I spoke up to my in-laws. Father, mother, I have something to report. I went to the hospital yesterday and found out I'm pregnant. Hearing this, my father-in-law exclaimed, "Really? That's wonderful. This is the happiest day. What a fantastic present. Congratulations, Nancy." He was overjoyed. My mother-in-law's eyes welled up with tears of happiness. Congratulations, Nancy. You've worked hard. We'll support you all the way until the baby is born. Take care of yourself and have a healthy baby. The executives and relatives who were listening also joined in the celebration, applauding and congratulating us. Amidst all the smiles, I took a deep breath and continued. I'm sorry to ruin the celebratory mood, but I have one more thing to report. I'm not the only one with a child. Everyone looked puzzled, not understanding what I meant. Nick has a mistress who has given birth to his child. I recently found out about this by chance. The room erupted in shock, and the atmosphere turned chaotic. My father-in-law was trembling with anger. Nancy, is this true? Could it be a mistake? Yes, it's true. I saw it with my own eyes and heard their conversation. What is Nick doing? He's got a woman outside and even a child, betraying Nancy. Unforgivable. It was the first time I had seen my father-in-law so visibly angry. My mother-in-law looked stunned, covering her mouth in disbelief. The birthday celebration turned into a heavy atmosphere in an instant. A few days later, my father-in-law, as the company president, held an emergency board meeting. In Nick's absence, they decided to exclude him from the list of candidates for the next president. The decision was unanimous among the board members. The executive vice president, who was not related by blood, was chosen to be the next president. He was a capable and highly trusted person among the employees, and no one opposed his appointment. Nick, unaware of any of this, found out a week later through the company newsletter. Dad. What's going on here? I wasn't told anything. Explain this to me. Nick, panicking after seeing the newsletter, stormed into the president's office, shouting, Nancy? What are you doing here? He seemed confused when he saw me there. Just sit down. My father-in-law's angry tone silenced Nick, who sat down, overwhelmed by his father's authority. Nick, do you know why you were removed from the list of candidates for president? You should know better than anyone. You are not fit to be president. I believe that myself. What do you mean? What did I do? Nick was clearly rattled but seemed intent on hiding the truth. I decided it was time to reveal everything. I saw you, Nick, at the obstetrician's office with a young woman, celebrating the birth of your child. Huh? What are you talking about? You must have been mistaken. I haven't been to any hospital, and I just go back and forth between home and work every day. Nick tried to laugh it off, but his voice was shaky. But when I checked with the company, they confirmed you left work early that day. What were you doing after you left early? Nick grew more agitated, realizing how much I had uncovered. Oh, that day. Now I remember. I totally forgot. I was nearby for some errands and dropped by because a friend's child was born. Yeah, that's it. I completely forgot. Nick tried to cover up with a flimsy lie that anyone could see through. But I wasn't letting him off that easily. I silently took out my smartphone and pressed the play button. From the phone, the conversation between Nick and his mistress could be heard clearly. Even in my shock at the hospital, I had recorded their conversation as evidence. Nick's voice, talking happily about divorcing me and being a good father, was clearly recorded. Realizing he couldn't talk his way out of this, Nick slumped and then brazenly confessed. Yeah, that's right. I have a child with my mistress. What did you expect? Nancy isn't having kids, and she's getting older. It's partly her fault I had to find someone else. He continued with a cold smile. And besides, this has nothing to do with my job. I've been serious about my work and contributed to the company. Changing the succession plan because of an affair is irrational, Dad. Can you really say the company is better off without me as president? Nick began to criticize his father, the president. After listening to Nick's rant for a while, my father-in-law slowly spoke. Nick, can you truly say from your heart that you've contributed to the company? I've heard everything about your behavior. My father-in-law had apparently heard various rumors about Nick from the employees for some time. You've been visiting your mistress's house during work hours for years, claiming you were on outside business. Many colleagues and subordinates have seen you, and it reached my ears too. There's even talk that you've been spending company money on your mistress. At first, I didn't want to believe it and defended you, but after hearing Nancy's story, I had no choice but to accept it. The company has already started investigating you. Such a thing. After saying that, Nick fell silent. Not making excuses meant the rumors the employees and my father-in-law had heard were true. It's disgraceful. To cause trouble for the company and to burden Nancy, who is pregnant. Nancy, please accept my apologies on behalf of my son. This is a critical time for you, and I'm deeply sorry for the added stress. My father-in-law bowed deeply to me. Pregnant? What? What does he mean? Nick reacted to his father's words, looking at me. Yes, I'm pregnant. I was at the hospital for a regular checkup the day you were there with your mistress. That's when I found out. Nick looked shocked, more so than happy. You're pregnant? Well, now. It's too late. You're too old to be having kids. And how do I know it's even mine? You could be lying. Nick lashed out at me with cruel words, questioning the paternity and telling me not to have the baby. I guess he's already desperate. I was too stunned to respond. Are you choosing your mistress and her child over Nancy, who is carrying your child? My father-in-law shot back. What? Are you saying the baby born recently isn't mine? If you don't believe it, get a DNA test. After your infidelity was discovered, I had both of you investigated. The child isn't yours. That's certain. That's impossible. What proof do you have? Nick shouted, clearly agitated. We used a detective. Your mistress has a real partner, and it's not you. My father-in-law produced several photos. They showed a flashy young man, apparently the mistress's real lover. This underground rocker is the real father. The child looks just like him. Look at the pictures. The man, who was good-looking, was seen drinking with various women, including a photo with Nick's mistress. Lies. You're just trying to break us up. I don't believe it. Then ask her yourself. My father-in-law's words prompted Nick to call his mistress, looking worried. He couldn't rest until he confirmed it. Over the phone, he pressed her for the truth. At first, she denied it, but eventually, fed up with Nick's persistence, she admitted it. She confessed that the child's father was indeed the underground rocker. Because the rocker couldn't have it known he had a child, he couldn't acknowledge it. The mistress, a fan, desperately wanted to have his child. She had initially approached Nick for his money and used him. She was using Nick's money to support the rocker and couldn't let go of the financial support. Knowing everything, Nick lacked the energy to blame his mistress. So, I was deceived from the start, he muttered, collapsing to his knees. Nick, who had betrayed me, was now betrayed by his mistress. Looking utterly defeated, Nick couldn't move. A few days later, I filed for divorce. Of course, I also demanded alimony. Nick tried to argue, wait. The child wasn't mine, so technically I didn't cheat. I'm innocent. It doesn't matter. The child I'm carrying is yours, without a doubt. If we divorce now, think about how it will affect the baby. Do you want our child to grow up without a father? Please reconsider the divorce. He pleaded, suddenly changing his tune. A father like you would be worse than none at all. It's not good for the child's upbringing. I was determined to divorce, and it seemed we were at an impasse. Knowing Nick's stubbornness, I had already consulted with my father-in-law. He acted quickly, introducing me to an excellent lawyer. Thanks to this, I was able to secure alimony from both Nick and his mistress. The divorce was finalized under favorable conditions for me. As a result of the scandal, Nick was disowned by his father. Having lost everything, Nick was demoted to a regular employee at the company, and the attitudes of those around him changed drastically. Nick had been rude and arrogant toward his subordinates, so their newfound disdain was his just desserts. Feeling humiliated, Nick resigned voluntarily. Without a stable job, he bounced from day labor as a security guard to working on construction sites, finding such physically demanding work challenging. It was only a matter of time before he quit altogether. Rumors spread that he had turned to drinking during the day and was living a degenerate lifestyle. Yet, no one around him offered help. He was reaping what he had sown. As for me, my pregnancy progressed smoothly, and I gave birth the following year. Even after the divorce, my in-laws continued to support me during my pregnancy. After dedicating some time to raising my child, I found a job at a company my father-in-law recommended. It was a workplace with many female employees, including several single mothers, and offered a supportive environment for working parents. The advice and encouragement from these women were invaluable to me. Even though you're divorced, this child is still our grandchild. If you're okay with it, we'd love to continue helping, my mother-in-law said, showing deep affection for both me and my child. Though divorced, my in-laws regularly visited to see their grandchild and helped take care of the baby, which was a great relief for me as a single mother. I was still learning to navigate life as a mother and a professional, but with the support of those around me, I felt hopeful. Once, I had longed for marriage, thinking it would bring happiness. While I believed I had achieved that when I got married, I now realize I wasn't truly happy. In fact, I'm much happier now after the divorce. My child gave me strength and courage. With my child, I have nothing to fear, and that alone brings me happiness. I have finally found true happiness. What a boring woman. Breaking up was the right choice. He discarded me like trash and then married a beautiful woman. He must be so eager to brag about it. He always looked down on me, saying things like, "Even though you're not pretty, you should at least celebrate your sister's wedding. Don't mind that the groom is your ex." That's what he said. But he's gravely mistaken. What? I don't have a sister, though? What? He seemed taken aback by my words. I don't usually like to do this. But I have to tell him the truth. Even if it ruins his life. My name is Catherine. I'm currently living with my boyfriend, Jack. We've been dating for 3 years now, but there's still no sign of marriage. It's unsettling that even though we live together, he hasn't brought up marriage. Does he really intend to marry me? At first, he was all about getting married before I turned 30, but it turned out to be just a magic phrase to keep me from leaving him. I met Jack when I was 29, working part-time at a restaurant. He came in with some coworkers. My first impression of him was a man with a big attitude and even bigger words. He was bragging about how amazing he was and how he'd become a bigger man. He spoke so loudly that other customers could hear everything. Despite my repeated requests to quiet down, he just glared back. It was the worst first impression. However, Jack started coming to the restaurant regularly. Talking to him, I realized he was surprisingly serious and well thought out. That bad first impression began to fade, and we started talking more. Before I knew it, we were exchanging contact information, emailing daily, and sometimes calling. One day, he suddenly presented me with a bouquet. "I've liked you for a while. Will you go out with me?" Touched by his sincerity, I answered, "Yes." That's how we started dating. Time flew when I was with Jack, and we began living together after 3 months. But now, I think that moving in together was a mistake. If only I didn't have the magic words. "It's over." "What?" "I can't see a future with you anymore. It's better for both of us to end things now. Basically, let's break up now." That's not something you say so casually, right? And to break up without considering my feelings, that's just irresponsible. We've been living together for 2 years, and I've been waiting to get married. We were having this conversation across the table. It was a different scene than usual. But maybe it was just me who felt that way. Because Jack's face, sitting across from me, hadn't changed a bit. He even seemed happy to be breaking up. How could he say such things? He's got a girlfriend in front of him, shocked by the sudden breakup talk. "You've been going on, but I really don't like troublesome women. You're older than me, so I thought you'd say, 'All right then, take care. I need to sleep early for tomorrow.'" Magic words. They were nothing but an illusion. Why didn't I realize it sooner? This man's true nature. Are you listening to me? What more did he want me to say? I sighed and squeezed the words out to Jack. "Fine. We'll break up." "That's right, as an older person, you should." "So, this is the end of our relationship." There was nothing more to say. I got up to go to the bedroom. "Where are you going?" "To the bedroom, where else?" "What are you gonna do in the bedroom? You're not gonna say you're going to sleep, right?" "Hey, stop joking around. We've broken up, so pack up your stuff and get out of here," Jack said with a smirk. He gestured for me to leave, as if he couldn't wait for me to go. Thinking about how I wasted my precious time on a future with this jerk made me incredibly sad. I held back tears as I packed my things. Then I heard Jack happily chatting on the phone in the living room. "I'm finally free. Now I can come to you with a clear conscience. From now on, I'll always be with you. Love you." Hearing this, I was stunned. It was obviously a woman he was talking to. So that's it. I realized why he suddenly broke up with me. He had another woman. I was just in the way. Behind me, as I packed, Jack was happily talking to some woman on the phone. With each word, tears I'd been holding back fell one by one, trickling down my cheeks. Wiping away my tears, I grabbed a few belongings and left the room, feeling like I was escaping. I couldn't bear it anymore. Packing everything in that situation felt like a cruel joke. Convincing myself it was for the best, I left the apartment filled with memories behind. A month after breaking up with Jack, I threw myself into work to forget the past. I quit the day job at the restaurant and started working full-time as an office employee at the company where I used to work nights. The president, Amy, my friend's sister, started the company alone in her 20s. I had previously turned down her offers to work full-time, always saying, "I'm going to get married and become a homemaker." Thinking back, I feel embarrassed about those words. But that's in the past. What matters now is how I live my life going forward. Happily, meaningfully, and joyfully. Forget the past, just power through with a screw-it attitude. I was determined. But then something happened that shattered my resolve. One day, I came home from work to find a missed call from a familiar number. Why? It was Jack's number. I had cancelled my old phone and changed my number the day after we broke up. Yet, somehow, Jack had found out my new number. It creeped me out a bit, but I also felt a slight thrill. Maybe Jack regretted breaking up and wanted to get back together. Perhaps things didn't work out with the other woman? It was wishful thinking, but I still had feelings for Jack. I called back immediately. But he didn't answer. Why isn't he picking up? 5 minutes later, Jack called again. This time I answered right away, but the call cut off abruptly. What? Despite several attempts, he never answered my calls. I gave up and went to bed, leaving my phone on the table. The next day, as I was getting ready for work, Jack called again. Why now? I wanted to answer, but I'd be late for work. I could have ignored it, but... Hello? I answered the call. Hey! How've you been? I heard Jack's voice for the first time in a while. I was happy to hear it, but I had something important to say. After you suddenly broke up with me and kicked me out of the apartment, I became alone overnight. Do you think I've been okay since then? Since that day, I've been... Stop it. I call you after so long, and you start with such a downer. Can't you be a bit more upbeat? How can I be upbeat? How can you even say that? It's unbelievable. You have no idea how much I've suffered. I was infuriated by Jack's insensitive words. He didn't understand why I was angry. And only thought about himself. Sorry, but I have to hang up now. I've got work. I know that. That's why I called. What do you mean? I was just curious how the woman I dumped is living. Are you crying yourself to sleep, or are you still holding on to some unrealistic hope of getting back together? But too bad. No matter how much you beg, I'm not coming back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jack was just mocking me. I felt foolish for even being slightly happy about his call. Overwhelmed by the absurdity, I couldn't help but cry, even though I had to work soon. As soon as Jack realized I was crying, he snorted and hung up. I felt so frustrated and pathetic. What am I even doing? I wondered why I had to go through all this. The more I thought about it, the more muddled my thoughts became. But after that day, Jack stopped calling. Was it just harassment? But why would he harass someone he broke up with? Unable to understand his actions, I spent my days in turmoil. Then one day, I received a call from an unknown number. Who could it be? The call ended as soon as I answered. A wrong number? But then, calls from the same number began to occur frequently. They came at all hours. Whether I was at work, home, or on my days off. This went on for a month. The calls would end as soon as I answered, and if I called back, it just rang endlessly. These mysterious calls pushed me to the edge. I started losing sleep and even struggled with daily life. My health deteriorated, and I began missing work. Finally, we can't handle this anymore. If you resign now, we can give you a small severance pay. I had no energy to resist. The next day, I left the company with a little severance pay. But the calls from the unknown person continued relentlessly, adding to my stress. And then, I can't take it anymore. Just as I was about to break down, I received a call from a familiar number. Hello. It was Kathy, my friend from college. We hadn't been in touch for about a year, as we'd both been busy. It's been a while. What's up? Heard you broke up with your boyfriend. I tried to sound tough. But hearing her kind voice made all the emotions I'd been holding back spill over. She listened quietly on the phone as I poured out everything. When I finished, she said she had something to tell me. I'm sorry. What? I should have reached out to you sooner. Then maybe you wouldn't have been hurt so much. What are you trying to say? I didn't understand what she meant. She then revealed something shocking. No way! I was shocked too. I mean, I wasn't directly involved, but to think you were going through all that. Why? How? But she spoke calmly, with a firm resolve. I know it's tough. But do you really want to just accept this reality and do nothing? I wouldn't. I couldn't stay quiet after going through so much. What about you? Her words were more reassuring than anything else. I don't want to either. I'm relieved to hear you say that. Kathy responded, suggesting we think about the future together. Sure. I agreed, and our conversation, filled with strong emotions, continued until morning. 3 days later, I returned to work. Thanks to Kathy, I was able to vent all the pent-up feelings and make a fresh start. My days were busier than before. But they were fulfilling. During that time, I didn't receive any mysterious calls. A month later, something unbelievable arrived from Jack. It was his wedding invitation. Inside was a photo of Jack and his fiancée, Amy. So it's true. Though I knew it, seeing it was a different story. And as if he knew I was looking at the invitation, Jack called. Hey, did you see the invitation? You saw the photo, right? Well, that's Amy, my girlfriend, soon to be my wife. She's beautiful and a CEO. A catch you could never compete with. Should I say congratulations? I already knew from Kathy about Jack marrying Amy. And his promotion to vice president of her company. So it wasn't a surprise. But for Jack, it wasn't entertaining enough. What a boring woman. It was right to break up with you. He dumped me like trash and was now marrying a beautiful woman. He couldn't wait to gloat. Jack belittled me, saying, even if you're not pretty, you should celebrate your sister's wedding. Don't mind that the groom is your ex. He said so. But he was mistaken. What? I don't have a sister. What? Jack sounded confused. I don't really like this kind of thing, but I guess it can't be helped. I have to tell him the truth. Even if it meant destroying his life. I don't even have a sister. What are you talking about? Have you finally gone crazy? You're the one who's lost it. Since when did I have a sister? When did I become Amy's sister? Well, you'll figure it out on the wedding day. Think hard about it until then. Good luck with the preparations. Hey, wait. I cut off the call and immediately blocked his number. 2 weeks later. Let's go. The day of Jack and Amy's wedding arrived. Whether it would be the best or the worst day for them depended on their actions and words. I wasn't sure what would happen, but I was sure it would be the worst. There's no way I would allow that. I couldn't let them off without bringing them down. As I arrived at the venue, I saw a large crowd of guests. Such a huge turnout. Easily over 300 people. No surprise for a CEO and vice president. Among them, a crowd gathered around the bride. Amy. As she noticed me, she approached. Glad you could come. I'm not here to celebrate. Since when could you talk like that? Something must have happened, right? Amy taunted, knowing full well the crowd around us. Amy took Jack away from me and pushed me to the edge. She was the root of all my problems. I was surprised when I found out you were Jack's fiancé. Are you pleased with yourself for taking Jack away from me? I confronted her. I don't know who told you, but what a rude way to put it. It's not like I stole him. If he came to me after just one physical encounter, doesn't that mean you had no appeal as a woman? Isn't it wrong to blame me without acknowledging your own lack of charm? Amy retorted with malice. Anger boiled within me at her spiteful words. Then, from the back, I heard Jack's loud voice calling out. I looked over, and there he was, walking towards us slowly. He stopped right in front of me. How does it feel to see your ex-boyfriend marry someone better than you? He sneered. Birds of a feather flocked together, indeed. They were similar even in their spitefulness. I think you're a perfect match. It's rare and amusing to see a couple as rotten to the core as you two. What did you say? Are you mocking me? Getting angry over that? You're more small-minded than I thought. Is that why you kept calling your ex? You must have gotten my new contact information from her. For the first time, Jack was visibly shaken by being ridiculed. And Amy showed her irritation too. Seizing the moment, I pulled out a voice recorder from my bag and held it in front of them. What's that? Don't you know? A recorder, isn't it? Correct. This recorder has everything. Your harassment, misuse of company funds, and bad-mouthing business partners. If I release this, it's over for both of you. They were speechless at this unexpected bombshell. Nothing to say? If you remain quiet, I might just play it right here. Hey, stop it! Please, don't! Jack and Amy frantically tried to stop me. In the scuffle, the recorder fell and turned on, broadcasting their misdeeds loudly. This isn't us! Jack protested, but the gathered guests started to close in, wondering what was happening. Don't come! Hey, you! Stop it now! Amy screamed louder than the recorder, urging it to stop. Jack lunged to grab it, but I picked it up first. He came at me furiously. But then it was. Stop this right now, a loud voice resonated through the venue. Everyone turned towards the voice. And there stood a woman with a commanding presence. Gracefully dressed and walking with poise. She walked leisurely, wearing a gorgeous dress. The guests made way for her, captivated. Even Jack was no exception. She's beautiful. Who could she be? Everyone wondered, watching her approach us. And then, she reached us. Long time no see, Amy. Catherine! What are you doing here? It was Kathy. A wedding, huh? Who would have thought my sister would get married? Life is full of surprises, isn't it? What are you doing showing up now? You're not here to sabotage me, are you? I wouldn't do that. But I couldn't forgive you for hurting my dear friend, so I had to come. Kathy replied, her words laced with anger. Amy's face showed fear upon hearing Kathy's words. Meanwhile, Jack, who had been watching the exchange, timidly approached Kathy. Are you a friend of Amy's? Nice to meet you, groom. I'm Amy's sister, Catherine. Sister? Such a beautiful sister. What? But I heard you said Amy's sister was unattractive. Kathy shot back, and Jack, completely smitten by her beauty, was speechless. Are you listening? Shocked by her words, Jack finally regained his composure. Wait, what? I thought... He stammered, pointing at me. I'm not her sister. You just got it wrong. Her real sister is Catherine. Catherine? Jack was stunned upon realizing the truth. It would also be so. Kathy and I shared the almost same given name, hometown, and even age. The biggest surprise was that we both lost our parents when we were young. The only difference was in the spelling of our names. Our first meeting and the discovery of our shared background. It is unforgettable. It was like a miracle. Jack stood there, dumbfounded by our story. But Amy, unconcerned, pushed past him and confronted me. I don't care about your meeting. You ruined my wedding, now take responsibility. But it was all their fault. They even say it's our fault. Amy always thought only of herself. When I think about that, I get an indescribable feeling. But Kathy is probably the one who suffers the most. Kathy, undeterred, fiercely addressed Amy. You haven't changed a bit, always self-centered. You don't care about anyone else as long as you're happy. And the man who chose such a woman is no different. Birds of a feather, right? You're well matched. What's with you? Showing up after so long. Enough is enough. Amy lunged at Kathy. But I stepped in to protect her. Get out of my way. Amy shoved me hard. Ouch! Catherine. At that moment, the voice recorder in my jacket pocket fell to the ground, accidentally playing a compromising recording of Jack and Amy at high volume. Hey! The obscene voices of the two echo inside the venue. Hearing that, Jack, who had been stunned, started to panic as if waking up. What is this? Stop it! Turn it off! Sorry, it seems to be broken. I can't stop it. No way! I said as their incriminating voices echoed throughout the venue, leaving the guests shocked. Unable to bear the humiliation, Jack and Amy fled the wedding venue. Was that okay? I guess so. The wedding is probably cancelled now. They got what they deserved. Yeah, we did what we could. Yeah. Later, we learned that Jack and Amy had to pay a hefty cancellation fee for the hotel. They had invited so many people, it was only natural that it would be expensive. But they did not have the money to pay the cancellation fee. Since their embezzlement was exposed by an employee's tip-off, they ended up facing police charges. Furthermore, the true nature of the two people was revealed by the audio flowing from my recorder. The company went bankrupt, and all their contracts were severed. Their actions came back to haunt them. Meanwhile, Kathy and I grew closer. After everything that happened, I found it hard to be alone without breaking down in tears or feeling anxious. Kathy suggested we stay together, and 3 days later, she arrived with her belongings, saying, "From now on, we'll be together." Now, we live every day happily and contentedly, like real sisters. My name is Emily Johnson. I've been married for 3 years. I come from a pretty wealthy family, while my husband's family is more middle class. He seems to feel inferior because of the financial gap in our marriage and always tells me he'll cherish me for a lifetime. Thanks to him, every day is blissful. Moreover, my husband cares deeply for my parents and even suggests living with them. But I've been holding off, thinking maybe after we have kids. Then, let's at least visit your folks often. They raised such a wonderful woman, after all. We need to give them some peace of mind. With such a kind and considerate husband, I often think I made the right choice in marrying him. But then, out of the blue, a totally unexpected divorce drama erupted. And it happened while we were at my parents' house. Why a divorce? I'm sorry, but I want us to split up, it can't be helped. Why? What did I do wrong? Was it because I made you shop with my mom? Or because I always asked you to drive when she needed it? Or was it because we always ate her cooking when we're at her house? No, none of those are the reasons. I actually enjoyed going out with your mom. I'd go anywhere with her. Then why? Why bring this up while we're at my parents' house? Is there something about me you don't like? Well, I have my complaints. That's natural when two people live together. What then? I've always been grateful to you. All my friends say how rare it is for a guy to get along so well with his wife's parents, and I've been so thankful for that. That's nice of you, thanks. It's not just thanks. I don't understand why. There was never a sign of you cheating or anything. Did you fall for someone else? Even as I said it, I knew it didn't make sense. He was sometimes late from work, but nothing excessive. He never had to work on weekends. No overnight business trips. No signs of another woman at all. If anything, the only thing was his phone being locked, but doesn't everyone do that? What's the reason? I was panicking, repeating why and how over and over. This kind of talk should happen at home, just the two of us. Yet, he brought it up in front of my parents. I can only imagine what they must be thinking. Probably feeling sorry for me and hurting inside. But it seems I was wrong. I want a divorce too. Shockingly, my mom had filed for divorce as well. What? What's happening? My mind was beyond panicked, just blank. It felt like the life I had built was crumbling down. What's going on? In contrast to me, my father was calm. He said it with a quiet voice and an expressionless face. It can't be helped, dear. After all, you've fallen for someone else. What? Actually, I've fallen for someone too. Yikes! What a strange noise you're making, such a silly girl. Who is she, this woman? Where's she from? She's the woman right in front of you. Eh? Do you mean your mom? No way! Dad, what are you saying? That can't be true. That's right. No way! My heart's gonna stop. This is like a double affair. Well, it was an affair, but if we get married, it won't be anymore. What are you saying? What are you saying? What are you saying? Do you think I can accept this? Oh, come on, we're not the age to ask for permission anymore. He's an adult, I'm an adult. But there was no sign of you two having an affair. We got along quite well, actually. It's weird that you didn't notice. We always went shopping together, and after that, we always went to a hotel. That's why I always came home late, right? Huh? But when I said you were late, you'd say you went to 5 or 6 places. Yeah, including the hotel. So I was being lied to. No, it's not a lie. The number of places is right. Maybe you didn't notice because you lost love for me, didn't feel the crisis. In contrast, Ashley always got jealous when she saw us getting along. Gross. Ashley, don't you feel sorry for Emily? I can't help it, I fell in love. Besides, I've heard a lot of complaints about Emily from Steve. As I listened, my sympathy turned into love. My head went blank, and my calm father and I were bombarded with whatever they wanted to say, eventually being pressured to sign the divorce papers. Fine, I'll divorce. What about you, Dad? Yeah, divorce. He took the pen and signed the divorce papers. Finally, let's be together now, they seemed happy for some reason. After signing the divorce papers, I felt burned out and could only say, what is this, a nightmare? However, my voice didn't seem to reach the two of them, who were gleefully excited. Shall we have some coffee then? Whether it was cheerful ignorance or selfishness. My mother cheerfully went to the kitchen to make coffee. Following her was Steve, my husband, whom I had just divorced. This can't be happening. Why did it turn out like this? It's okay. I have a plan. My father murmured, looking down, seemingly deep in thought. Here you go, coffee. The last one I'll make for you. From now on, make it just for me. Sure, of course. Their conversation was just creepy. Is this really the man who was my husband until just moments ago, and the woman who was my mother? Well, she might still be my mother, but I can't even acknowledge her anymore. As I drank my coffee, I began to voice the doubts that were swelling inside me. Mom, you're 53, right? Why bring that up all of a sudden? And Steve is 30. Yeah, that's right. That's a 23-year age difference. So what? When you fall in love, age doesn't matter. Don't talk nonsense. That's right, a 23-year age gap is nothing. I can't believe this. Look at Ashley. She doesn't look her age, does she? More feminine and beautiful than you. Plus, she's got the charm of a mature woman. No man could resist falling for her. What a compliment. Compared to you, you're flat-chested, don't wear makeup, and are rough around the edges. You don't have a feminine bone in your body. I've never met such a beautiful woman before. I couldn't understand how he could say such things. Maybe Steve's eyesight has gotten worse. Because of my father's wealth, Ashley had the money and time to indulge in beauty treatments. Anyone would look better if they did that. But without makeup, her face is full of blemishes. It's not about being beautiful with makeup, it's about not being seen without it. Doesn't he understand that? Or, is this just jealousy because my husband was taken away? You wouldn't understand. Yeah, whatever. Thanks for complimenting my mother. So, when did this all start? Not long after you got married and Steve started visiting our home, right? Yeah, I asked her to go out first. At first, I really thought I couldn't do something like stealing my daughter's husband, since he was my son-in-law. But as I kept hearing him complain about you, I started to feel sympathy for him. As I cared more, that sympathy turned into love. I fell in love the first time I met her. Couldn't believe such a beautiful woman existed. I can't believe this. Stealing your daughter's husband, and a husband taking his wife's mother. Unbelievable. Truth is stranger than fiction, they say, and this is exactly that. Mom, didn't you love Dad? I never thought you'd have an affair. Love? Oh dear, after being married so long, it's just inertia. We were just like air to each other, neither here nor there. That's horrible. Your dad probably felt the same, that's why he signed the divorce papers without a fuss. Is that true, Dad? I tried to engage my father in the conversation, but he seemed lost in thought and didn't respond. See, he doesn't even answer when you talk to him. Boring, isn't it? Weren't you and Dad in a big romance? To be honest, it was for the money. What? I really didn't want to hear this kind of revelation at my age. Well, your dad was originally a wealthy guy, a real rich kid. As for me, I wasn't poor, but I certainly wasn't well off. That's why I was determined to marry someone wealthy. And you managed to make that dream come true? It took effort. I researched a lot when job hunting. What did you research? I interviewed at companies where the CEO had a son around my age. That's something. I got a job at your grandfather's company. Worked hard to get noticed, took various certifications, and got recognized. Then your grandfather offered to make me his mistress. Mistress? Don't be so shocked. That's just how rich people are. Did you accept? No way, being a mistress is too unstable. Mistress as a profession. So, I said I wanted to date his son instead. Bold move. In exchange, I promised to take care of your grandfather for life, in any way he needed. Then he introduced me to your father. I went all out, and eventually won his heart. And that's how I became the wife of a CEO. But you said it was a big romance. It's similar, isn't it? Not at all. Matter of perspective. Your grandma didn't like me, opposed it, but your grandpa approved, so I could marry. It's like to shoot the general, first aim for the horse. I can only think it's awful. It's effort. You wouldn't understand, being born into wealth. For 30 years, until your grandpa passed away, I kept my promise to him. But before he died, he said he'd leave everything to me. However, when he passed, the inheritance went only to your grandma and your dad. It felt like I was just there for show. That seems like a fair distribution to me. But when your dad dies, everything will be mine anyway. It's just a matter of waiting a little longer. You're talking about my dad, right? Yes. You're already thinking about that? Of course. Your dad's life isn't going to last much longer. What do you mean? Ha ha ha, I didn't tell you, but your dad has terminal cancer. He was given 6 months to live. Why didn't you tell me about this? What would it change if I did? But I told Steve, though. About my own father? And to talk about it in front of him now. I had suspected something. My strength was fading. I was in pain, something felt off. But you said it was under control with medication. What kind of medication were you giving him? Painkillers. There's not much else you can do for terminal cancer. Plus, hospitalizing him and prolonging his life would just be a hassle. Better if he just passes on quickly. How can you say that? I want the inheritance. That's so low. You're going to get old too. Who do you think will take care of you then? Nobody will care for someone like that. Don't worry, I'll take good care of Ashley. That's why I can be at ease. As long as I have Steve, I'm secure. I was shocked by the sudden divorce and now by the news of my father's limited time. I couldn't forgive my mother for being so blunt about it. Enough questions, shall we? Let's go to our new house, just the two of us. A house for just the two of you? Yes, we've already prepared our new home. They left laughing, leaving behind my father and me, feeling abandoned. Dad, are you okay? Yes, I'm fine. How's your health? I knew about my condition. Then why didn't you go to the hospital sooner? A CEO can't just be hospitalized. I knew about my life expectancy. I had to prepare someone to take over the company. Me? You gave me the job because of that? Yes, I didn't trust Steve. I thought Steve, being my husband, would become the vice president and eventually take over the company. However, my father never intended to make Steve the vice president. Instead, he appointed me about 2 years ago. And now, I was almost acting as the CEO. It seemed my father's health was deteriorating, but I had no idea there was such a backstory. Well, there's not much left for me to teach you. Soon after, my father was hospitalized. Just for pain control. Then one day, I received a call from the hospital that he had passed away. The funeral was a big corporate affair. Despite the divorce, I informed my mother, who had been with him for so long, but she didn't shed a single tear. After the funeral, while I was at my family home, my mother and Steve came and prayed in front of Dad's memorial. Don't worry, I'll take the inheritance. Rest in peace. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Now that your dad has passed away, all the inheritance is mine. This house too. And he must own that condo, plus land here and there. It's all ours now. I won't give any of it to Emily. Do you really think that will happen? Of course, I'm his wife. It's the law that the wife inherits everything. That's what I've been waiting for. Dad knew all about it. Eh? What do you mean? He left a will for me. It detailed everything you've done. What have I done? It even described your relationship with Grandpa. What relationship? I was just taking care of him. Taking care. I never thought it included that kind of care. What are you saying? When you married Dad, you promised to take care of Grandpa's nightly needs. Dad knew and still didn't divorce you. He still loved you, saying it was a sickness. I can't believe you betrayed him so easily. I had no choice. It was the condition of our marriage. To maintain this lifestyle, it was nothing. Dad was too kind. But I'm glad he divorced you before he died. I never imagined my own mother would be like this. What are you talking about? You don't even understand marriage. Right, I wouldn't understand. I lost my husband before I could. Anyway, I'll be the one inheriting. There's nothing you can do about it now. We'll see about that. The lawyer will be here soon, and you'll understand. A lawyer? Why is a lawyer coming? Dad was a wealthy man. And in his will, he wrote to go through a lawyer. Eh, really? That's unnecessary. It's necessary. With a greedy mother like you. If we don't do it properly, who knows what you might do? You might even try to take the company. Are those words you say to your mother? If you were really a mother, I wouldn't. But you've caused Dad so much pain, you're not my mother. What are you saying? You're made from my genes. That's what I regret the most. Say whatever you want. Isn't the lawyer here yet? I can't wait to get the inheritance distributed. Right, Steve? Yeah, right. We're going to be millionaires now. We'll have a great retirement, Ashley. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Hope you get to enjoy it. Why do you have to be so mean? She's just bitter. I'm happy with Ashley, but Emily has no one. Poor thing. You're both so chummy. Wonder how long that will last. You're so rude. Soon, the lawyer arrived. Ashley, long time no see. Oh, calling me by my name? That's unusual. I've always been referred to as Mrs. You were the CEO's wife, but you've been divorced for about half a year. Oh, that's right. Haven't seen you since the divorce. Yes, the CEO left a lot of things to be settled. What he left behind? Yes, he had a lot to say. Really? What did he possibly have to say? It couldn't have been anything important. We'll see about that. Well, just get on with it, please. And let me know how much of the inheritance I'm getting. After all, it's all going to be mine, isn't it? Huh? Of course, it's obvious, right? I was his wife. A wife inheriting is a given. Even if Emily gets something, she can just renounce her inheritance. We can't do that. If Emily doesn't inherit, there will be no one left to do so. Eh? If Emily doesn't inherit, there's no one left? What do you mean? I'm here, aren't I? Ashley, you have no right to inherit. Huh? Why don't I have a right to inherit? I was his wife, I should have the right to inherit. You were his wife, in the past tense. Have you forgotten? Past tense or not, a wife is a wife. Don't talk nonsense. The lawyer sighed and took out a document from his bag. This is the CEO's will. He began reading the will. It was simple but significant. First, the CEO entrusts all his assets to his daughter, Emily. Eh? Second, the family home is either to be sold or lived in by Emily. Why? Third, the company is to be maintained by Emily as CEO for the sake of the employees. Fourth, since the divorce was caused by the former wife, Ashley, this will be considered a demand for alimony, amounting to $1 million. What's that? What do you mean? Basically, the CEO's entire estate goes to his daughter, Emily. That's absurd. How much wealth are we talking about? Roughly $1 billion, not to mention substantial stocks. I'm the wife. Isn't a wife entitled to the inheritance? Normally, half would belong to the wife, but since Ashley, you are divorced, you have no right to inherit. That's ridiculous. Please pay the alimony to Emily. That's insane. He's gone, why should I pay anything? It was claimed before his passing. You must have received a certified letter. I did receive something strange. That was probably the alimony claim. Then, what about the property division? We were divorced, so half of his property should be mine. Unfortunately, the CEO has passed away. Everything now becomes part of the inheritance, and you, Ashley, have no right to it. If you had claimed at the time of divorce, there might have been negotiations, but now it's too late. So, I'm just paying and getting nothing? That's how it is. That's too much. That's just how it is. Wait, so Ashley is penniless? Yes, that's correct. That's ridiculous. Can't something be done? No, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing? No way out? There isn't. You divorced too early. Why the hell did I bother with an old hag like you? Eh? Steve? Don't call me so casually. I'm not interested in a penniless old hag. If I knew it would be like this, I wouldn't have divorced. If Emily had inherited, I would have been a millionaire. And if Emily was CEO, I could have lived a leisurely life. Steve, calm down. How can I be calm? I'm divorcing you. But we loved each other, didn't we? Love? As if. I only married you because you said you'd inherit millions. And now you're penniless. I can't stand the thought of being with a blemish-covered old hag without makeup. That's awful. Steve said that and left, abandoning Ashley. But that wasn't the end. Wait a second, Steve. You have something too. For me? That's right, Emily and I were married. So I'll get part of the inheritance, right? What are you talking about? You must be dreaming. You too have to pay alimony. Why me? It's obvious. The divorce was because of your affair. You owe $600,000 in alimony. Why $600,000? I was a vice president at the time of the divorce. The affair with my mother damaged my reputation. Considering my age, $600,000 is actually less than it should be. You should be grateful. I don't have that kind of money. You'll have to pay. Lawyer, please proceed with the claim against Steve. Understood, CEO. Eh? CEO already? Yes, I became CEO as soon as Dad was hospitalized. The board of directors decided. I've been CEO for some time. Damn it! I couldn't even become vice president. That's because Dad never trusted you. It was obvious, really. What do you mean? He knew you were just after money, having an affair with Mom. Damn it! I won't pay. Run wherever you want, but you can't escape. You'll learn the power of a CEO. Ignoring my words, Steve stormed out of the house. Seeing this, Ashley spitefully said, "That man, he should go to hell." Mom. What? You too, go to hell. Such things to say. Mom was in tears, probably never expecting such words from her own daughter. Later, Steve apparently moved somewhere else, but when contacted, he arrogantly said to find him if we could. So, I asked the lawyer to garnish his wages. When the company asked why, I told them everything. Consequently, they fired him for being so irresponsible. He had to move out of his apartment because he couldn't pay the rent and ended up in a shabby place with drafts. He tried to find a job but was forced to live on part-time work. When I demanded the alimony in full, he said he couldn't bear it anymore and borrowed money from a consumer loan to pay it. Now he's desperate to pay off his debt. Mom kept asking to live with me, but I couldn't trust her after what she did. When I firmly demanded she pay the alimony, she, not knowing much about society, borrowed money for the alimony and living expenses and paid it all at once. Later, I heard she started working part-time, but that wouldn't be enough to pay off her debt. Now, she's working at an inn. I sold our family home and am now enjoying life in a high-rise condo near the company. I don't know what kind of encounters the future holds, but I've decided to stay away from money-hungry people. Hey, high school dropout. Try greeting in French. Huh? You can't do it because you're just a high school dropout, huh? My sister, laughing, prompted me to introduce myself in French. She must think I'm barely competent in French because I'm just a high school graduate. To her, I replied with a smile. Got it. Leave it to me. Ignoring my surprised sister, I began revealing her secrets in French. I'm Jessica Wood, 28 years old. Born into a typical American white-collar family. I have a younger sister, Emily, 3 years my junior. My dad is a middle management executive, and my mom, now a part-timer, used to be a homemaker. Emily, unlike me, was cherished by our parents since she was little. Mom, unable to attend college due to family circumstances, was determined to ensure her children went to college. However, as the eldest daughter, I wasn't academically inclined. By the time I reached the 3rd grade, my parents had given up on the idea of sending me to college. In contrast, Emily was smart and fairly pretty from a young age. So, our parents doted on her, the more capable child. They sent her to a prestigious private middle school, while I attended the local public middle school. Emily, unlike me, was accepted into a prestigious private high school, but I ended up at a public high school known locally for its troubled students. You're just not cut out for academics. We'll let you finish high school, but after that, you're on your own. We're saving our money for Emily, my mom said. Dad just nodded in agreement. So, after high school, I had to start working. But I had no idea what to do, as everyone around me went off to college. Feeling lost, I managed to get a job at a delivery company, thanks to a recommendation from a high school teacher. They had a dormitory, so I decided to move out. It was supposed to be for Emily's sake, but she herself said, "I've always disliked you. Dumb and ugly, I just wished you'd disappear. Thanks for leaving so soon." Far from feeling sorry, she was actually spiteful. I was so frustrated I cried, but I resolved to live on my own terms. Years passed, and Emily graduated from Harvard and joined a well-known multinational trading company. I hadn't returned home since leaving, but occasional messages and photos from Emily kept me somewhat updated on the family. Dad was laid off due to poor company performance and now worked behind the scenes at a local supermarket. Mom continued working part-time. Emily did offer some financial support, but mostly spent her money on spas and yoga classes, so Mom couldn't quit her job. One summer, Emily insisted I come home, so I did. For the first time in about 8 years. I didn't want to return at all. Arriving home, I said I'm back, but got no response. As expected. So I just went in and found my parents and Emily. You didn't have to come back. Emily's being nice letting you in this house. Be thankful to her, Mom said harshly. Mom had aged as expected over the years. What, no gifts? You're still a disappointment, Dad added. His hairline had receded noticeably. Seeing how much they'd changed, I felt the weight of my absence. Emily, lounging on the sofa, glared at me and said, "Still as ugly as ever, huh? Living in the countryside, eating nothing but potatoes? Fits a clumsy sister like you. Anyway, why don't you sit over there," pointing with her chin to a spot. I wanted to retort, "You haven't changed either," but held back. I didn't want to tell her, but since it's a celebration, I thought I'd share.
A celebration? Don't tell me you're getting married?
Exactly that. And guess what? He's the president of a major French food import company. A foreigner living in France. He's a really nice guy. He's gonna take care of us, even building us a mansion in France after we marry. Despite it being Emily's fiancé who's doing everything, Dad said it with an air of importance.
That's right. Who would have thought we'd be living in France? Good thing we put our hopes in Emily. If we'd relied on you, nothing like this would have happened.
Mom also started laughing, her nostrils flaring wide. I guess they were overjoyed. But you know, this has nothing to do with you. However, if you pay your own way to France, we might let you stay cheaply. Emily laughed along with Mom. They don't realize that leaving America is the greatest happiness for me.
That's all you wanted to say? You called me back just for this?
What? Just say congrats. We're having a family gathering to celebrate, and you have to show up. Is it okay for me to join? We have to, in front of the relatives. Put on a show of a happy family. I see, got it. It was expected, but hearing it face to face was infuriating. Emily works in a trading company, dealing with foreign food imports. And is fluent in French. And as I said before, I'm just a high school grad. Emily always looked down on me for it. I'm embarrassed to even mention I have a high school dropout sister. I wish you weren't part of our family.
If you feel that way, go ahead.
It's not that simple. That's why it's a hassle. I don't care. I've been on my own since high school. Your life is none of my business. Huh? We're family, legally. I'll allow minimal interaction. Sure, let's do that. Anyway, once Emily marries, we're moving to France. You'll be on your own here in the States, Dad said. Ever been overseas? No way. I don't even have a passport. Going abroad is great. I know because I've traveled a lot, both for work and leisure. Emily started bragging again. I've traveled the world, but France is special. Everything is picturesque, so foreign. Well, it's a foreign country, that's to be expected. Overseas is nice, but Southeast Asia is a no. Places like Thailand or the Philippines are okay for tourism, but I hate seeing all the poor people in the countryside. Then why not pay more for their produce, help their economy? It's hard for them, no work at home, so they go abroad to earn. Living is tough for everyone, they're just the exception. Seeing my annoyance, Emily glared at me. You seem like you have something to say.
People in Southeast Asia work hard too. Many work at my factory.
So, you're just like them, working in a factory.
Stay with your kind. I'm a winner, you're a loser. I was close to tears. But soon she'll be gone from America. That thought comforted me. Back from home, at work the next day, my colleague Maya noticed my gloom.
What's wrong, Jessica? You look down.
Maya, from Malaysia, works in the US to support her sister's education and family. She and her sister are my age. She struggles with reading and writing English but speaks it fluently.
Ah, Maya, sorry. Just some family stuff. If it helps, I can listen. Or we can go for a drink. Thanks for caring.
Maya treats me like a sister, as her own sister and I are the same age. Maya is usually quiet and hardworking, well liked at work because of her serious nature. One day, I received an email from Emily. I have to entertain a foreign buyer. There are tourist spots near your workplace, perfect for the occasion. Can you arrange everything? Actually, just do it. Indeed, there are famous tourist spots near my workplace. I know which hotels are reputable, and I'm familiar with both popular and hidden gems. I didn't like her bossy attitude, but I didn't want to deal with the hassle of refusing. If it doesn't interfere with my work, I thought it'd be okay to help, so I told Emily that. On the appointed day, Emily arrived with the foreigner. He was younger than I expected, a handsome guy with beautiful blonde hair. Nice to meet you. I'm William. Born in the US, so I speak English pretty well. Relieved he spoke English, I was about to guide them in my car when Emily snapped. What's this, a compact car?
Yes, but is there a problem? It's disrespectful to put a guest in a car like this.
I live alone in the countryside, so this size is convenient for me. If you don't like it, arrange something yourself, I thought, but kept quiet to avoid trouble. No, it's a cute car. I love compact cars. William surprisingly said. Compact cars are a brilliant invention. Especially popular mini trucks in France. Emily was displeased, but William seemed happy, so we left ignoring her opinion. William shared a lot with me. His dad's relocation brought his family to the US, where he was born. He studied in America in college, wanting to work related to the US, and now he's handling American affairs in his company. He talked a lot, mostly to me, which made Emily increasingly unhappy. When we arrived at the tourist spot, she said, I'll take over from here, just grab some food and wait. At the hotel, that's enough for today. Come pick us up at 8 a.m. tomorrow, she said dismissively. But soon, another email from Emily. There's something to talk about. Come now. Knowing arguing would only make things worse, I reluctantly went to her. You're here. Let's go somewhere else to talk. I followed Emily to a nearby diner. She lectured me, don't embarrass me. And don't flirt with William. Both accusations were baseless. Don't put my guest in a compact car. Rent a luxury car, it's common sense. And don't talk too much to William. He's my guest, and you're just a driver. Just drive and guide without extra chatter. You're not in a position to talk to William. So she said. I responded nonchalantly and tuned her out. It's hard to believe she's getting married. I felt sorry for her partner, wondering if he's like her. But it's none of my business. After her long lecture, I finally returned, and there was Maya.
Welcome back, Jessica. You're late. You look troubled. What happened?
Just tired from talking to Emily.
How about we have a drink in my room? I made some Malaysian dishes. Let's eat together. Malaysian cuisine? Sounds delicious. I'd love to join.
After having a light dinner with Maya in the room, I suddenly craved something sweet, so I went out to the convenience store. Arriving at the store and about to enter, I recognized a familiar face inside. It was my sister Emily. And next to her was a man I had never seen before. They seemed close, but could he be her fiancé? She said her fiancé was a foreigner, but this man looked definitely American. I knew Emily was here for business, But why was she with another man in such a place? As I pondered this and stopped, the two of them came out of the store, and I quickly hid. Are you sure I can trust you?
Don't worry. Even if I get married, I plan to divorce soon, within a year, and return to America. Then I can live with you. I'll get money from the alimony and division of property. Everything is going according to plan.
I was shocked to hear Emily's words about her plan.
That's clever of you, elite lady, to come up with such a scheme. It's your fault for making me feel this way.
Emily said about the man, named Takashi, who then silently pulled her chin and kissed her, not caring that they were outside. I recorded their conversation on my smartphone camera, feeling like I had done a good job. I finished shopping at the convenience store and hurried back to the dorm. Even after returning, my heart was still racing from what I had seen. As time passed, I couldn't forget the shocking event. Then I received news about a family gathering to celebrate Emily's engagement. Honestly, I didn't want to go, but since it was a family event, I felt obligated to attend. My mother was very proud of Emily's engagement to a foreign company president.
Emily's fiancé is a French company president. They plan to build a mansion in France after getting married. And then, we're all going to live there together. Next year, we'll be in France.
My mother was more talkative than usual, perhaps due to the alcohol. Emily was also in a good mood, smiling broadly.
He's the president of a company that does business with mine. I handled their account and got close to him, leading to the proposal. He said I was as beautiful as a doll.
Emily's boastful talk seemed ridiculous to me. I was drinking alone at a distant seat, but Emily approached me.
Why are you sitting alone? You won't find a president, but maybe you'll manage to find a plain man.
Even though I ignored her, she continued, well, we'll be living in France after getting married. We plan to sell the family home and move to France, so you'll have no home to return to. You should just live on your own. It's none of our concern. Feel free.
I don't need to be treated like family anymore. That sounds like sour grapes to me. Well, I'll live my life my way, so please stop interfering. That's my line. Don't expect anything from my wealthy husband just because we're family. I wouldn't dream of it. Just make sure you don't end up divorcing quickly and returning to America. What are you saying? That's rude. Oh, did I hit a nerve? What are you talking about? We're going to swear eternal love before God. You don't believe in God, but you're making vows to him? What a farce. I have that much feeling. Whatever you say sounds like a loser's howling.
Our voices got louder, and we were eventually stopped by people around us, but Emily's panic suggested the previous conversation was true. Finally, Emily's fiancé was coming to America. Emily and our parents went to the airport to pick him up, but I was to meet him at a family dinner. On the day of the dinner, I headed to the designated hotel. As usual, my parents were unpleasant. The banquet was held in a private room of a traditional restaurant, with Emily and Jack already seated when we arrived. It was my first time meeting Jack. He seemed like a genuinely nice guy, 38 years old. Upon our entrance, Jack, with a friendly smile and somewhat awkward English, greeted, "Nice to meet you, I'm Jack." Emily then fluently introduced our parents in French. When it was time to introduce me, Emily smirked unpleasantly.
Come on, high school grad. Greet him in French, will you?
Facing Emily's mocking, I smiled back and said, "Okay." After a brief cough, I began speaking in French.
Welcome to America, Mr. Jack. My name is Jessica, Emily's sister. I currently work at an American delivery company. Emily has been hiding a secret from you, which I will now explain.
Eh?
How can you speak French? Oh, a Malaysian colleague at my workplace taught me. Might have a bit of an accent.
Indeed, I had been learning French from Maya. Although Malay is Malaysia's official language, Maya was also fluent in French. During breaks and days off, I learned French from Maya. I've always liked French, often watching movies and dramas, and now I use online videos to study. I see you've studied, but what secret are you talking about? The past bullying? That's ancient history, Emily began to rant. No, not old stories. This is recent. Jack looked puzzled as we spoke in English. Then I explained in French. Sorry. What I want to discuss is how my sister is planning to use her marriage to you for her own gain. Her own gain? What do you mean? Jack asked with a puzzled expression. First, please watch this video. I showed him the video on my smartphone. It was the scene of Emily kissing Kyle in front of the convenience store, which I had accidentally recorded. I translated the English conversation into French on the spot. This was recently filmed. The woman is my sister. Her face is hard to see, but the man is Kyle, a colleague from my sister's company. I knew that much from their conversation at the time. What does this mean? Jack's face turned stern. Emily, what's this about? Explain. This is fake. I only love you. As Emily, Jack, and I argued in French, our parents were confused. You claim this video is fake, but it's enough to make me distrust you. I will conduct further investigations. As I translated for our parents, they began to panic. Emily, is what Jessica is saying true? Isn't this just a lie Jessica made up for revenge? My mother tried to defend Emily. No. This is all true. Jack, don't be deceived. Jessica is just a high school graduate with bad conduct. We disown her for this disrespectful behavior. Sorry for any inconvenience. That's right. Jessica is just jealous of her beautiful and successful sister, trying to ruin this marriage. My father added. Of course, they were speaking English, which Jack couldn't understand. Come on, Jessica, explain properly to Jack. If they insist, I told Jack. My parents are claiming my story is not true. But there's no proof to show it's a lie. On the contrary, I have this video as evidence. Which testimony do you think is true? I believe you, Jessica. Let's go somewhere else and you can tell me more. Understood. With that, leaving behind my bewildered parents and wailing sister Emily, I stood up with Jack. Later, after hearing my story, Jack confronted Kyle and made him confess everything. Emily's engagement with Jack was called off due to her fault, and Jack demanded significant compensation from her and our parents. Emily, having caused trouble for her company's client and tarnishing its reputation, was fired. My parents had already sold our family home in anticipation of moving to France, but all the money went to Emily's compensation and damages. Having quit their jobs in preparation for the move to France, my parents would struggle to find work and a new home. But that was no longer my concern. Fluent in French, Emily tried to get a job in another multinational trading company, but her previous misconduct was well known due to the industry's close connections, and no one would hire her. She had no choice but to work as a cleaner in a motel. And then, surprisingly, I ended up in a relationship with William. William, who had come to America, started visiting me each time he was in the country, thanks to the help I had given him before. Recently, he even proposed to me. William, who loves America, has requested a transfer to the American branch, and we plan to live in the US after getting married. He is currently studying English intensely. When I told Maya about my engagement, she was delighted and gifted us a honeymoon trip to her homeland, Malaysia. Maya would be our guide and taxi, allowing us to tour the sites more affordably than with regular tours. With my upcoming marriage, I decided to quit my current job, but I intend to continue my friendship with Maya. My life as a high school graduate, which had its share of struggles, was about to embark on its second chapter. Choosing a younger woman over an old hag like you is only natural, right? If I'm an old hag, then you're an old geezer. I wanted to snap back with that but held it in, glaring at my husband's smirking face. True, I'm older than my husband and the oldest in this house. The young woman my husband referred to, almost twice my junior, is none other than our daughter-in-law. Yes, the person my husband had an affair with is our son's wife. And she, being called a young woman, seemed pleased, clinging to my husband's arm and looking down on me with disdain.
Really, don't you feel sorry for her? A woman who marries only to have her husband turn out like this, it's no wonder she'd have an affair or two.
My husband said dismissively, referring to our son. Such heartless words for our son who had just received a terminal diagnosis. I was about to yell, but a calm voice spoke from behind me.
Hey, Mom.
Our son, caught in this mess, had a surprisingly serene face. But his eyes betrayed an uncontainable anger.
I need your help with something. Okay?
My name is Kelly, a 55-year-old office worker. My husband Nick is younger, 51 years old. We met 30 years ago through a hobby, mountaineering. There was a group with a wide age range, from 20s to 60s, and a roughly equal gender distribution.
Mountaineering is great, isn't it?
Why did you start, Kelly? Nick was approachable, bright, and easy to talk to even on first meeting.
I started because of my dad. Inspired by your dad, that's nice.
What about you, Nick? Why did you start mountaineering?
Well, if there's a mountain, a guy just wants to climb it. What's that about?
His open, indiscriminate nature quickly made us friends.
How old are you, Kelly?
Me? I'm 26.
My type is a mature woman.
Really?
That means you're younger, right?
How old are you?
22. So young.
It's just a 4-year difference.
It's quite a difference.
Is it? Our conversation was so enjoyable. That day, the day we met, he asked me out on the mountain summit.
Actually, I fell for you at first sight.
My heart had already been his during the climb, so I immediately agreed. From that day, we were a couple, sharing our passion for mountaineering. We enjoyed dates and never running out of things to talk about. A year into our relationship, I found out I was pregnant. This led to our marriage. After marrying, I realized Nick wasn't much of a saver. He was a hard-working employee, but at 23, he earned less than me and tended to spend his paycheck immediately. Around my 9th month of pregnancy, I took maternity leave. Though I received some salary during this period, it was less than when I was working. We heavily relied on my nearby parents for financial support. They helped not just with money but in various ways, and I gave birth to a healthy boy. We named our son Joshua and raised him with great care. I returned to work before Joshua turned 1. Balancing work and childcare was challenging, but we supported our family through both our jobs. Joshua grew up healthy and lively. In a blink, he turned 24. After graduating from college, he lived on his own and seemed to work hard. One day, he called saying, "I have something important to discuss with you, Mom and Dad. Please keep next Sunday free." It was that Sunday. My husband and I were both nervous. When the doorbell rang and I opened the door, there stood Joshua and a woman about his age. She was a demure, pretty woman.
"Mom, Dad, let me introduce you. This is Nancy, whom I'm currently dating." "Nice to meet you. I'm Nancy," she said, bowing slightly.
"What a charming lady," my husband remarked, and Joshua beamed happily.
"We're planning to get married,"
Joshua announced. Nancy was apparently Joshua's co-worker. Hearing about my son getting married filled me with a deep sense of joy.
Gosh, Joshua is at the age to get married. What's with that nostalgic tone, Mom? So, what do you like about Nancy?
I asked straightforwardly, though it felt a bit bold.
She's usually reserved, but speaks her mind when it matters. She even stands up to me, her coworker, without hesitation. That's because Nick is.
Let's not start with the critiques. My husband interjected, and everyone burst into laughter. Watching their affectionate interaction filled me with happiness. After Joshua and Nancy left, I spoke to my husband.
"She's a wonderful woman, isn't she?"
"Yes, quite charming."
"You keep saying charming a lot."
I sighed.
"Do I still look young?" "You look younger than your age, but don't take Nancy's words too seriously. She was just being polite."
I was 52 and my husband was 48, but he seemed thrilled with Nancy's compliment about his looks. 2 years after the marriage proposal, 26-year-old Joshua and his wife came over.
We're thinking of buying our own home and need to save up. Could we move in with you? Move in? I don't mind, but you have Nancy's consent, right?
Our house is spacious with extra rooms. There was enough space for Joshua and his wife. However, I doubted any daughter-in-law would be thrilled about living with her mother-in-law so soon. When I asked, it turned out Nancy was the one who suggested it. In a later discussion with all four of us, Nancy seemed genuinely excited about living together. I asked my husband,
"What do you think, honey?"
He looked delighted.
"If they live with us, we can see our grandchildren right away if they're born."
Nodding in agreement. I understood his enthusiasm for potential grandchildren. We all agreed to start living together. I was still working, so I wasn't home much. Nancy quit her job after getting married and became a full-time homemaker. She took care of the house during the day. She has been a great help, taking on responsibilities like receiving deliveries and taking care of laundry and meal preparations. Thankfully, our limited time together meant fewer conflicts, and life was smooth. But this arrangement didn't last long. About a year in, we discovered Joshua had a disease weakening his immune system. The dinner on the day of the diagnosis was silent. I tried to accept it, but couldn't help fearing the worst, leading to a sleepless night. After the diagnosis, Nancy started working to help with Joshua's medical expenses and was frequently out. As Joshua's condition worsened, he eventually needed a wheelchair. We all supported him and decided to rely on a daytime caregiver. One evening while I was washing dishes, my daughter-in-law, Nancy, had a request.
"I have sudden work tomorrow. But it's the day I'm supposed to take Joshua to the hospital." I tried to say no, but they insisted I must come in. "Kelly, can you take Joshua to the hospital for me?"
Of course.
"Thanks." "Oh, Mom's taking me tomorrow?"
Joshua's frail voice came from the living room connected to the kitchen. I hurried over to listen.
"After the hospital, can we go shopping? There's something I want to buy."
Sure.
"Why don't we grab some pancakes after shopping? There's that new pancake place, right?"
Nick suggested, browsing on his phone.
"Sounds good. Let's have lunch then."
The next day, I pushed Joshua's wheelchair to the hospital. It was a busy Monday, and the crowded hospital seemed to tire Joshua. So, we decided to skip shopping and head home early. Joshua told me in the car that he wanted to buy a gift for Nancy. To thank her for always supporting him.
"But it's pathetic. I can't even shop for what I want. And we didn't get it today."
He muttered sadly, and I felt a lump in my throat hearing his words.
"Your intention is enough,"
I assured him, but he didn't respond. So I tried to sound cheerful.
"How about we make some pasta for lunch?"
We arrived home much earlier than planned. To my surprise, Nancy's car was there, though she was supposed to be at work.
"Huh? Did Nancy not go to work?"
As I got out of the car and passed Nancy's car, I saw something horrifying. Inside her car were Nancy and Nick, who was supposed to be at work.
"Joshua, can you go inside first?"
I asked, helping him into the house. After he was inside, I saw Nick through the car window. Crouching down, fumbling with something. Peering in, I caught him trying to buckle his belt in the cramped car over Nancy. The car seat was reclined, and they were in a compromising position. Not at all like a father-in-law and daughter-in-law. I knocked on the window and told them to come inside.
"So, what exactly were you two doing in that tight space?"
I confronted them in a room separate from where Joshua rested. The situation was undeniably suspicious. But they didn't seem flustered. Waiting for one of them to speak, Nick snorted. "It's obvious, isn't it?
What else would a man and a woman do in a cramped car?"
His brazen response shocked me. I saw my husband with such an ugly expression for the first time. His attitude and words instantly made my blood boil.
Man and woman? You're her father-in-law, and there's a significant age gap.
Age is just a number. It's all about looks. I'm younger looking than sick Joshua, aren't I? He's pale and all.
You think that way?
I was just helping Nancy. She can't be intimate with her immobile husband. Poor Nancy, crying secretly knowing Joshua's life is short. I just offered her some comfort.
You just took advantage of her. And Nancy, are you okay with this?
I confronted my son's wife, who was standing beside my husband with a look of dissatisfaction on her face. I want to enjoy my life too. Work, hospital visits, house chores. I hate it. Why should I suffer while others my age have fun? Right, Nancy is still young. It's sad she's stuck caring for a sick person and working every day.
Shut up!
I yelled at Nick. Nick has money and health, so he can fulfill my desires. I've decided to switch to him. Nancy declared, and I was repulsed by their callousness.
So, you've been involved since Joshua got sick?
Yes. Nick admitted nonchalantly.
Is all this true?
The living room door opened, and there was Joshua, trembling with rage, looking at them.
Is it true? While I'm suffering from illness, have you two been having a good time?
Joshua confronted them loudly. However, it was the body of my son, weakened to its limits. His weakened body must have struggled to shout. I went to him and put my hand on his back.
Joshua doesn't deserve to be yelled at.
Nancy raised her voice.
I thought I'd be happy after marrying. I quit my job for this, but ended up working again. No trips, no shopping, just hospital, work, and home. I've been sacrificing my desires for your care.
That's right, Joshua. You should thank Nancy first. Joshua clenched his fists. I couldn't hold back and scolded Nancy.
What kind of attitude is that? We have a caregiver during the day, and at night it's mainly me and your father taking care of you. And you say you had to work, but we were the ones paying most of the living expenses. The treatment costs were coming out of Joshua's insurance.
Nancy's words sounded as if she had sacrificed everything, but that wasn't the case. She hadn't been taking care of Joshua at all. She was out working during the day, and at night, it was mostly me who looked after him. Even house chores like cooking and laundry, which we were supposed to share equally after she started working, ended up being mostly on me because she was overwhelmed at her new job. I had been supporting them financially and taking care of everything. At times, I felt like nothing more than a maid. Yet, I had cooperated, considering her plight of having a husband with a life-threatening illness at a young age. And to be treated this way was unbearable. Nick, however, seemed completely oblivious to my feelings. Looks like Nancy was quite dissatisfied with a lot of things. Nick said with a vile smirk. You can't satisfy your wife with that body, right? A husband who's not only broke but also a burden. It's only natural for her to leave a sick husband like you. Right. Don't make me the villain. The bad one is you for getting sick. I couldn't contain my anger at a daughter-in-law who didn't provide care, didn't contribute to household chores, and didn't bring in any income. And my disgust for Nick, who, despite being a father, could insult his suffering son to such an extent.
Enough from both of you.
Why did Joshua, who had been planning to buy a gift for his wife after his hospital visit, have to endure this? I was infuriated. I want a divorce. I told Nick.
I'm divorcing you.
That suits me fine. I'd rather be with a young and pretty girl than an older woman. I'll give you your divorce. Nick replied, putting his arm around Nancy and snorting. Nancy, you should divorce him too. Joshua said to her in a trembling voice. I expected her to agree, but she immediately refused. No. If I divorce you now, I won't get your inheritance, right? After all the hardship I've endured, I deserve it.
What are you saying? Please divorce my son and do whatever you want with that man.
I pleaded. It was as if she was waiting for Joshua to pass away sooner.
No. But I'll leave this house. I'll come back for the inheritance once you're gone,
Nancy said, and she and Nick quickly packed and left. Joshua maintained his composure beside me, still in shock.
Mom, I need your help with something,
Joshua said firmly.
I'll never forgive those two. There's a quiet rage burning inside me.
I could see a quiet flame of anger burning within my son. Unlike me, he possessed a calmness in the face of it all, which was truly admirable.
What do you have in mind?
Yes.
I'll do whatever it takes to help you, Joshua.
Can you listen to my plan then?
Of course.
Joshua and I devised a plan. Later, only Nick returned home. He brought the divorce papers, and Nick and I eventually finalized our divorce. As for Nancy, she never responded to any of our calls. 5 years later, Joshua passed away. I always wished he could have outlived me. His funeral was attended by many, including medical staff and colleagues from his previous job. Among the many attendees, I spotted two faces I hadn't forgotten in 5 years. My ex-husband and Nancy.
Oh, you're here.
They both looked shabby. Nick, who had always boasted about his looks, appeared older than his age, his cheeks sunken. Nancy had lost her initial charm, her face hardened. They were both wearing worn-out clothes. As soon as they saw me, their eyes lit up like cats who had found their prey.
I'm here for the inheritance,
Nancy said to me as if it were the most natural thing in the world.
I deserve to inherit because of all the hardship I went through caring for him.
That's right.
There should be an inheritance. You're not planning to keep it all to yourself, are you? A child's property should be inherited by their parents. Just because we divorced after an affair doesn't mean our parent-child relationship is over. I'm entitled to Joshua's inheritance too. Hurry up and give us the money! This man has no savings, and these past 5 years have been really tough. But I've endured it all, thinking I'd get Joshua's inheritance. The affair was 5 years ago, so you've forgiven us by now, right?
Nancy's transformation was laughable. She used to sweetly call his name, and now she refers to him so casually. The only reason my ex-husband had money to spend freely was because I gave him an allowance. Since my salary was higher than his, I've been giving him money every month since we got married. I didn't want to risk him hiding his salary or not contributing to household expenses. So I gave him a bit more than necessary to avoid wasteful spending or hiding money. Despite divorcing me and marrying a younger woman, his nature hadn't changed. He was still no good at saving money and spent whatever he had. I bet life has been quite hard for the two of them since they left so boldly. I wonder where they found out about Joshua's death. They're really like hyenas.
Come on, give us the inheritance. You must have savings for a house, right? Don't think you can use it all up. I'm taking that along with the inheritance.
They pressed me, but I stood my ground and said firmly,
There's no inheritance for you too. What do you mean? This is what I mean.
I showed them a document. Their faces turned ashen upon seeing it.
Give it to me.
Nancy snatched the document, trembling.
Donation certificate.
She read slowly.
Yes, Joshua recently realized his time was near and donated his entire fortune to a medical research institution. This is the certificate. All of Joshua's inheritance you were after is gone. No way! What was the point of enduring these 5 years?
She seemed to have grown tired of Nick, staying with him only for the sake of Joshua's inheritance.
Then give me the money. I'm the one who took care of your son. I took him to the hospital, worked part-time, and sacrificed myself for him. I deserve to be paid.
Nancy demanded money from me.
There's something I haven't been able to tell you because you two have been missing.
Let me tell you now.
What?
Nancy raised her eyebrows. I revealed another truth.
You're no longer Joshua's wife. The divorce has already been finalized. So, you don't have any right to his inheritance. What? That's a lie.
Nancy was shocked. The truth is, on the day Nick and Nancy's affair was exposed, Joshua recorded their conversation from the other side of the door. After they left our home, Joshua and I took the recording to a lawyer. We explained that Joshua wanted to divorce his wife, who had become unreachable due to her affair. The lawyer suggested a court process. Public notice was given, and with Nancy absent, the trial began. Joshua's divorce was easily granted.
So, Nancy, even though you've been acting like Joshua's wife, you've been a stranger for a long time. A stranger? Such a foolishness. To think you've been living with another man for 5 years.
If Nick truly loved Nancy, he might have changed his heart and urged her to divorce and remarry him. But in the end, Nick just wanted a young woman who would provide him with physical comfort and care. Neither of them made any effort to change their situation, simply waiting eagerly for Joshua to pass away. That's why Nancy didn't realize she was single, and Nick didn't want to let go of his young wife who catered to him. I sighed heavily and turned to face them. Furthermore, I'm demanding compensation. You'll have to pay for the damages.
Damages? You can't be serious. We're already in debt. We thought Joshua's inheritance would clear our debts, but we can't pay any damages. Exactly. Why are you demanding damages now?
I always intended to demand compensation. You two just disappeared before I could. Now that you're back, of course, I'm going to ask for it. By the way, I've recorded everything you've said since you arrived. So, don't even try to deny the affair now. I informed them, and they were so infuriated by my words that they lunged at me.
Hey! What are you doing?
Fortunately, medical staff and company employees present at the scene restrained them, so I wasn't hurt. Are you all right?
Yes, thank you.
While being restrained, Nick and Nancy continued to yell, "Give us the money." Then I heard the sound of a police car, and officers arrived. You two are suspected of fraud. Please come with us to the station. Someone at Joshua's funeral must have called the police. Nick and Nancy were taken away by the police. Later, I learned from the police that they had been involved in fraud to repay their debts and had other criminal charges against them. They would be spending some time behind bars. I was surprised they had stooped to fraud. The two who had hurled insults at Joshua now faced social consequences. Nancy wasted her valuable 20s, despite all her complaints. While I sympathized with her for having a husband who fell ill young, everything else was her own doing. I felt no pity for the two who had even resorted to criminal acts. I didn't know the extent of their debts, but they might be chased by repayments until their deaths. I might not get the damages I demanded, but I didn't care anymore. If they were suffering that much, let them suffer out of my sight. It's been years since Joshua passed away. But I still receive thank you letters from patients every day, grateful for Joshua's donation. I read these letters and feel proud of my son's choice. His donation, which never reached the two who awaited his death, is helping many people. Joshua apologized for leaving me with nothing when he told me about his plan. But years after his funeral, I still receive letters of gratitude. His choice continues to nourish others' lives. How proud I am. I am truly fortunate to have had such a wonderful son. I continued working after retirement. My job is fulfilling and enjoyable. I'm glad I acquired specialized qualifications and knowledge when I was younger. Back then, I was desperate to raise my salary for Joshua's sake, studying hard for certifications. I have enough assets to live on my own, and I owe it all to Joshua. I still keep up with my hobby of mountain climbing. Joshua, thank you. I'll make sure to enjoy the rest of my life. Wait for me there. I whispered to his smiling photo.
Even though I called so many times. Don't mess with me. What are you doing?
On the night of our wedding, my husband George said he was going out for drinks with an old friend and left. I trusted George and married him, yet he was betraying me behind my back. Moreover, after this, the worst betrayal will be discovered.
I will never forgive you. Kelly, were you watching me? That's creepy.
Who's creepy? I'll send those words right back at you. The moment I heard from my father, I lost all my love for George. I'll corner him and destroy him. My name is Kelly, I'm 26 years old. I work in New York at a retail store. I've always loved fashion, so I enjoy my job. I still think I'm young at 26, but recently there's been a big change in my private life. I finally tied the knot with George, whom I had been dating for 2 years. We registered our marriage and had the wedding I always dreamed of. We met through a friend's introduction. I love male pop singers, especially the main vocalist in a certain group. I loved him so much, I talked about him everywhere. Then a friend said she knew someone who looked just like that guy. I was so excited, I begged to meet him. When we arranged to meet, I was nervously waiting. George, who would later become my husband, showed up. George is 10 years older than me. He was 34 at the time. He worked at a food company in sales. The moment I saw him, I fell for him. He was like a grown-up version of my idol. George probably didn't mind being admired by a girl 10 years younger. We started dating in no time. I knew I was a bit naive and dreamy. When I was introduced to George, I was completely charmed by his mature aura. I thought he would protect me if we got married. But as I dated George, I started to feel he wasn't the man I had imagined. I thought about breaking up several times, but in the end, we decided to get married after 2 years of dating. I thought supporting George would be the best for me. George trusted me, and I thought he would change his mind after marriage. Surely, he would become more responsible when we had children. I decided to trust George. Also, my father, living in the countryside, was very worried about my future as his only daughter. My mother passed away from illness a long time ago, and my father doted on me, his motherless daughter. I was happy about his feelings, but I couldn't bring myself to have an arranged marriage with the men he suggested. After all, there was no guarantee of meeting someone like George. When we decided to get married, George said seriously, "I'll work hard to get your father's approval." I smiled involuntarily. George was indeed serious about our future. We would surely be happy. However, soon after I started dating George, something surprising happened. It started with a phone call while I was at work. I rented a car. "Let's go watch the sunset." I was taken aback. George was supposed to be at work. At 3 p.m., my store was open. "Are you off today?" I asked permission from my supervisor to go to the back room of the store. I asked him quietly, and he said he wasn't off. Apparently, he found a scenic spot on his way to a sales call. "It's a beautiful spot, let's skip work and go on a date." I was confused. With a new employee at work, I couldn't just leave early. When I said I couldn't do it today, George said regretfully, "Oh, well. I guess I'll grab a beer and head home." George always had a way of getting out of work, even when he couldn't. Naturally, he got scolded by his boss and lost trust from clients. In the 2 years we dated, I wonder how many times George changed jobs. Every time a firing was discovered, we would argue. "Can't help it. I just didn't fit with that company," he would say in response to my displeasure about him quitting again. He had a bad work attitude, often sneaking out during work hours to have fun and taking unauthorized absences. Despite all this, George never thought he was the problem. Besides, how many companies do you think there are in the world? Don't you get it? The more I switch jobs, the more likely I am to find one that's a good fit, he would say, deflecting with his nonsensical theories. Perhaps his pride couldn't take being lectured by someone 10 years younger. Furthermore, he started complaining about the apparel company where I worked as a sales associate. He was unhappy with the limited time off and salary, urging me to change jobs. But I was content with the time off I had to follow my idol and the salary I received. "I think it's a nice job. I don't have any complaints," I explained, but he didn't seem to understand. He simply hated working, the epitome of the ant and the grasshopper type. I used to wonder why he owned so many high-end items despite his unstable employment. But we managed to date for 2 years because George was particularly kind after fights, which swayed me. Apart from his dislike for work, I thought he was a good person. With each date, my desire to not lose him to anyone else grew stronger. I asked George about getting married. Surprisingly, he agreed immediately. Sure. I'm 35, it's about time I settled down. And so, our marriage was set, and we visited each other's parents. George's family was a typical middle-class household. His parents seemed uninterested in him, ending the meeting abruptly. I was relieved to think we wouldn't be interfered with after marriage. But I also wondered if George's unreasonable behavior was a result of his parents' lack of interest. His casual attitude at work and tendency to lie might stem from not being cared for much by his parents. I felt a tightness in my chest. I felt sorry for George. Once we lived together, I would take good care of him, hoping he would change. When George first visited my house, he was surprised. It was an old, large, and formal house. My family held a certain status in the local community. I hadn't talked much about my family, only mentioning the absence of my mother. So, George probably never imagined we were wealthy. What does your family do, Kelly? My family had been in the transportation business since my grandfather's time, expanding it broadly. My father, too, had good business acumen and grew the company further. He worried about my future but never mentioned taking over the business. He supported my decision to leave town and work while enjoying my hobby. He had no particular conditions for my marriage, so he would probably be surprised by how quickly it was decided. We talked about all this on the train back home. George listened with sparkling eyes. So, marrying Kelly means I could become a president. Images of my grandfather and father, who worked hard every night, came to mind. President? I don't think that suits you, George. He was too busy for that, but George seemed more interested in the grand house than my words. Don't be silly. Nowadays, there are plenty of families struggling to find successors. I'll take over, he declared, winning over my father with his sales skills and charming smile. Kelly is an only child, after all. My father was pleased. He continued to talk smoothly about work. Actually, I've been headhunted. I'm planning to switch jobs for a better offer than my last company. It was a lie. Even after deciding to get married, George seemed ready to quit his job again, despite hours of convincing and seeing some change in his attitude. It seemed he still intended to quit. I felt a wave of exhaustion. Meanwhile, George talked excitedly about his new job, with my father nodding in admiration. But it was all a lie. There was no headhunting, no new company, no better offer. I suddenly felt scared by how easily he lied. But thinking that George really wanted to impress my parents, I felt I should support him in becoming a decent member of society. Since that day, George never missed a chance to suck up to my dad, trying to take over the family business. He often called my dad saying things like, "At 35, I've been offered a managerial position. They're saying I'll be promoted to department head in just 2 years. Can you believe it?" After he hung up, I confronted him. "Don't lie to my dad." But George looked at me displeased. "Why not? It's better for your dad to think he has a successful son-in-law. What's wrong with making parents happy?" It was all lies. It's impossible for him to be happy with that. As I was about to argue back, George brushed it off. "You'll see, I'm amazing when I really try. Just watch." Then came our wedding day. After much consideration, we decided to have it in my hometown. I was dressed in a beautiful, pure white wedding gown. Finally getting married and starting a family with George. It was a strange mix of happiness and nervousness. George arrived in his tuxedo, and we received blessings from colleagues, friends, and family. The guests on George's side also clapped and smiled. It was the best feeling. The wedding and reception ended. We had a room in the hotel at the venue. We were leaving early the next morning for our honeymoon in Guam. I chose the destination, a place I'd always wanted to visit. It was George's first time going abroad, and he seemed excited.
The ceremony was amazing.
I was thrilled when my favorite song played during the candle service. As I sat on the bed and took a deep breath, I noticed George was fidgety.
The after party? Starts at 6, right?
There was an after party planned following the wedding. My colleague and George's old school friend took charge of organizing it. We had reserved an ethnic restaurant near the hotel.
It'll be fun.
George got up distractedly.
I'm going outside for fresh air.
Something felt off. But at the after party, surrounded by old friends, George seemed his usual self again. When I mentioned his earlier restlessness, he laughed it off.
I'm just nervous about my first overseas trip.
I was nervous too. I have a fear of heights, so spending nearly 4 hours on a plane was a bit worrying. But I intuitively knew he was lying. The after party ended. George, who should have returned to the hotel, lingered at the venue. When I approached him, he told me to go back first.
I'm gonna grab a drink with mates. You can go on and sleep.
He's still drinking? I was surprised. Maybe he was really nervous about the trip and trying to distract himself with alcohol. I decided to rely on him during the trip.
All right. Have a good time.
But later, I found out George was with his ex, Diana, who had attended our wedding. They disappeared into the night. Around 10 p.m. I was fast asleep from the day's fatigue when the phone rang. It was George.
I called so many times. Don't mess with me. What are you doing?
He was angrily lashing out. I had just woken up and was confused.
We're surrounded by some weird people. They're all calling your name. What's that about?
I heard a knock at the door.
Someone's here, hold on.
I hung up and went to the door. My phone showed a history of missed calls from George. My dad was standing outside. Seeing my father's stern expression, I knew something was wrong.
Kelly, there's something important. Come with me.
I instantly knew it wasn't good news. My heart raced. I didn't want to know. But my father's face was tense and serious.
Actually,
at that moment, all my trust in George vanished. It was more than a shock. I finally understood the meaning of familiarity breeds contempt. We arrived at a hotel near the next station in my father's car. There are several hotels in the area, but this one is managed by my father. There was a crowd at the front desk, surrounded by employees in hotel uniforms. In the middle of the crowd stood George and an unknown woman. George started yelling when he noticed me.
Kelly, were you spying on me? That's creepy.
Creepy? I'll send those words right back at you. The moment I heard the story in the car, all my love for George disappeared. I was determined to bring him down completely. My father sharply interrupted George's words.
These are our employees. How dare you betray Kelly like this?
George turned pale.
What? All of them are employees.
Apparently, this is what happened. George had spotted his ex-girlfriend among the classmates at the wedding. He easily made a promise with her during the after-party. Then he lied about going drinking with friends to send me home first. He checked into this hotel without knowing it belonged to my father. It might not have been discovered. But my father was so happy about my marriage that he live-streamed my wedding in all the company's employee cafeterias.
What? Live-streamed? I didn't know. That's embarrassing.
I blushed, and my father, sweating profusely, apologized.
Sorry, I was just too happy.
While many employees congratulated us, it was quite a display of parental pride. I muttered how awkward it would be to face everyone now. However, my father insisted that this live stream helped us discover George's misdeed sooner. The hotel front desk man, who had seen the live stream, was shocked to see the new groom, who just married the boss's daughter, checking into the hotel with another woman on the night of the wedding. Though he let them into their room, the front desk was in an uproar. The employees debated whether to inform the boss. During their discussions, about 2 hours passed. George and the woman emerged from the room. The employees, determined not to let them leave, surrounded George. Panicked, George called me frantically.
It's all out in the open. What are you thinking? Treating my precious daughter like this?
My father, a former rugby player with a powerful voice, stood imposingly. George, always more delicate and gentle, was visibly shaken by his booming voice.
No, it's a misunderstanding, or a mistake.
His trembling voice was pathetic. It was clear he was trying to wriggle out of the situation. The ex-girlfriend looked at him with disdain. I had reached my limit.
Who is that woman?
My own husband is cheating right under my nose, and in front of my father's employees, no less. It was a huge embarrassment. Not only did he humiliate our family, but he also tarnished the company's name. I had forgiven him for his looks, but this was unforgivable.
I will never forgive you.
Seeing my furious face, George started making excuses.
Kelly, you've got it all wrong. My ex-girlfriend, she forced me.
Diana and I both exclaimed in disbelief, glaring at each other like furies. George seemed to have decided to blame it all on her, portraying himself as the victim.
Stop lying. We've already seen the surveillance footage of you happily checking in.
My father pointed out, making George flinch again.
Were you planning to spend the night with another woman and then go on a honeymoon with me the next morning? How could you be so shameless?
George was stunned, frozen by my direct accusations. I had never shown him this side of me before. An intense anger surged through me, more than I'd ever felt. Not only did he belittle me, but he also embarrassed our family to this extent. He was going to pay for this. In fact, the surrounding employees were utterly appalled. To think that such a happy wedding took place during the day, and by night the groom had already betrayed the bride. George nervously started to speak.
Kelly, it's not something to be so angry about. We were just reminiscing about old times.
I shouted back.
Stop lying.
I turned to my father.
Dad, he's been going on about being headhunted and becoming a manager, but it's all lies. He was actually after your business.
My father turned red with anger.
What? I thought he was always too good to be true, this guy.
Pressed by my father's imposing presence, George crouched down, holding his head.
I'm sorry.
Both my father and I looked at him with disdain, like one would look at an insect. He really was nothing but a pest who had crept into my life and our home. The employees around us whispered to each other about George's deceitful antics. He had fooled not only the president's daughter but the president himself with his marriage for money. It was a significant scandal we had stumbled upon. The employees didn't know how to react to the situation.
He's a good-for-nothing, a freeloader who can't even do a proper job. Just because he's got a bit of a handsome face.
I relentlessly exposed his secrets, and George looked like he couldn't believe what was happening.
I thought it was just a phase or a bad past that my naive daughter brought home. I didn't even hire a private investigator when they decided to get married, thinking we could re-educate him. But I never imagined he would turn out to be such a scoundrel.
My father was disgusted, and I felt sorry for him. I should have consulted more with others. Choosing a marriage partner based on looks alone was a mistake. I really intended to reform George. The idea that love could fix everything was just a sweet illusion.
Well, it's good that we found out now. Divorce immediately.
George shouted in disbelief, "What?" and looked up with a sly smile, starting to plead.
Please, anything but that. What about me becoming your adopted son instead?
My father and I were dumbfounded. George, excessively humble and groveling, was truly disgusting. Why should we have to accept such trash into our family?
What? You have a problem?
My father smirked at him, indicating he knew everything. Realizing this, George looked down, ashen-faced. When I looked at my father in confusion, he spat out.
Turns out, this guy, George, racked up a lot of debt. He couldn't borrow anymore, so he married you so that he could start borrowing again.
My father had immediately started investigating George's background after receiving a call from the employees. In just a short time, the extent of his debts was revealed, and that's why my father was constantly checking his phone amidst this chaos. Everything went dark before my eyes. He even had debts. That's right. I remembered. All those high-end items. I worked in apparel sales and always used products from my company, but George always flaunted his bags and watches. So that's how he could afford them despite not working. He must have been secretly racking up debt. Perhaps he even reassured lenders, saying he was marrying the president's daughter. Such a despicable man.
You're beyond redemption. The more I learn about you, the more disgusted I become.
George looked at me with shrunken eyes.
Kelly, don't say that.
Tears forming. Suddenly, he began to cry and clung to my feet.
Kelly, you're all I have. You said you'd support me.
His sudden attempt to win sympathy through tears. But I coldly shook him off. He exaggeratedly fell to the ground, obviously pretending to be weak.
Why bother now? Ask your ex-girlfriend standing right there for help.
I pointed to the woman standing sullenly beside him. Until then, his ex-girlfriend had been almost silent, but now she spoke with utter contempt.
He told me he'd make me the wife of a president. He married you but had no love for you. He just wanted to use you to escape his debts.
George, still on the ground, shouted in panic. His act to gain sympathy was clearly abandoned.
That's a lie. Diana's trying to frame me. I love Kelly the most. She would never hurt me like this.
Still trying to deceive us. I was fed up. Do you really think you can continue to fool us like this? Are you an idiot? I shouted. Diana, the ex-girlfriend, gained momentum and began exposing more of George's low-life behavior.
He squandered a fortune on slot machines. I'm done dating a good-for-nothing like him,
she said, trying to leave as if she had no further involvement. My father stopped her.
Even so, we will be filing for damages against you. Don't leave just yet.
Diana turned pale.
I'm a victim too. I've been humiliated by all this,
she cried out hysterically.
If the law recognizes that, we might listen to you, but that's unlikely. You attended the wedding. You're nothing but a thief.
My father said. He asked the front desk man to keep an eye on Diana so she wouldn't sneak away. Meanwhile, George was also panicking. Upon hearing the word damages, he looked as if he never imagined such a situation would fall upon him.
Of course. We've just had a wedding and now a divorce. You're 100% at fault,
my father said, glancing at his watch.
Our lawyer should be arriving soon.
George suddenly apologized, rubbing his head on the floor repeatedly.
Please forgive me, I really don't have any money,
he pleaded desperately. But it was too late for such appeals. My father and I looked down on him coldly. Watching George cry and flail like a child in front of everyone brought some relief to my anger. But I wasn't about to let him off easy. He deserved a complete downfall. Our lawyer was about to get to work. Prepare yourself, George. That night, George lost everything. He was hit with a huge demand for damages by our lawyer and was at a loss. We also told Diana she would have to make amends.
I've suffered enough because of you,
she spat at George. George eventually went to his parents, begging for money.
Lend me some money, thinking I'd save you.
His parents were shocked, having just celebrated their son's marriage, not understanding why he needed money. They had hoped to get financial help from us, knowing he married the president's daughter. But George quickly divorced due to his own doings. My in-laws immediately blocked his number and refused to shoulder his debts. George, with nowhere to turn, was left with debts and ended up on a fishing boat in the rough seas of Alaska. He better earn his keep. Life returned to normal for me after the swift divorce. Though deeply hurt by being seen only as a cash cow by the man I loved, I'm taking it as a life lesson. People around me know what I went through and are kind to me. I plan to focus on work and my hobbies for a while. My father's company became even more united after this incident. The employees feel proud of having saved the president's daughter, and there's a stronger bond among us. Sales have doubled, and a special bonus is planned. My father told me to take my time with marriage. This experience made me feel his deep love anew. I'm even considering joining my father's company to learn about business management.
Hola, suscríbete a Historias Vitales para no perderte nuevas historias. Mi esposa había estado trabajando en su proyecto especial durante 4 meses ahora. No era su proyecto personal, pero ella era la persona principal y responsable de su éxito. El proyecto estaba diseñado para salvar a su empresa, Bixler Enterprises. Los últimos 4 meses habían sido difíciles porque se vio obligada a trabajar duro. Era importante tanto para ella como para la empresa. Había una buena posibilidad de que Bixler Enterprises quebrara si el proyecto no se completaba. Sara tenía una licenciatura de Albrecht y un MBA de Wharton. Era la más inteligente de la familia. Yo empecé a trabajar como mecánico de autos justo después de la secundaria y después de 21 años seguía siendo mecánico de autos. No me importaba porque me gustaba el trabajo y pagaba bien. Era suficiente para pagar la universidad de Sara y criar a 2 hijos. No vivíamos lujosamente, pero estábamos bien. Los niños ya se habían mudado, y las cosas iban bastante bien con nuestros ingresos. Sara quedó embarazada 3 meses después de casarnos a la edad de 18 años. Durante los primeros años de nuestro matrimonio, vivimos con mis padres. Ellos tenían una gran casa vacía ya que 4 de mis hermanos se habían mudado. Eso significaba que teníamos una niñera mientras Sara completaba sus primeros años de universidad. Debido a 2 embarazos, la carrera de 4 años le llevó 6 años completarla. Fue difícil, pero lo logró. Siempre tuve trabajo y nunca me faltó trabajo extra si lo necesitaba. Después de que Sara se graduó de Wharton, alquilamos nuestro propio lugar. Tuvo ofertas de trabajo de varias empresas grandes, pero todas requerían que nos mudáramos. A mí no me importaba, pero Sara quería quedarse cerca de casa. Por eso decidió trabajar en Bixler Enterprises. Pagaba bien, pero lo más importante, le daba responsabilidad y la oportunidad de avanzar. Sara era una empleada trabajadora y dedicada. La presentación es el jueves en el Hotel Thyssen en Filadelfia. Tomé unos días libres en el trabajo para ayudarla según fuera necesario. Al final, todo lo que logré fue hacerle algo de comer cuando llegaba a casa. No sabía nada sobre su trabajo, ni tampoco quería saber, los negocios corporativos de alto nivel me aburrían. Empresarios de Europa, Asia y América del Sur venían aquí, la empresa pagaba sus boletos de avión y proporcionaba habitaciones en el Hotel Thyssen mientras estaban aquí. Era caro como el infierno, y por algunas cosas que Sara había dicho, la empresa estaba sobreestimando sus finanzas. Su presentación era importante para ella, para la empresa y para más de 200 empleados. Hasta el martes por la noche, todo iba bien. Sara llegó a casa con un traje nuevo, un traje gris con una blusa blanca. Desplegó todo lo que necesitaba en la cama de la habitación de invitados. Cuando se trataba de la limpieza de la casa, ella era normal, pero cuando se trataba del trabajo, era meticulosa. No entendía por qué necesitaba sacar su ropa interior de lujo, pero no dije nada. Además de su traje para la presentación, tenía varios vestidos de cóctel lindos para eventos sociales antes y después del evento. Siempre había evitado tales eventos, pero me sentía obligado a ir con ella si ella quería que lo hiciera. Me agradeció la oferta, pero dijo que no era necesario. Todos los materiales y equipos que necesitaba estaban guardados ordenadamente en el maletero de su Volvo. Antes de salir del trabajo, ella misma conducía el coche para asegurarse de que todo estuviera en perfectas condiciones. Tenía todo el día miércoles para prepararse y toda la Noche del miércoles para socializar con sus invitados. Sara era tan buena en lo que hacía que sentía que habría sido mejor si simplemente me hubiera mantenido alejado de ella. Finalmente, había terminado. Lo había revisado y vuelto a revisar todo. Todo lo que necesitaba ahora era una ducha caliente y una buena noche de sueño. Supongo que mi error fue que empecé a revisar sus cosas después de que Sara comenzara a ducharse. Pensé que estaba ayudando, pero resultó ser lo contrario. Estaba moviendo cosas en la cama cuando un pequeño sobre blanco cayó del bolsillo lateral de su bolso de maquillaje. Una carta de una farmacia, pero no del tipo que solemos usar. Dentro había 10 pastillas. No tenía idea de qué era, y las instrucciones eran confusas. Si es necesario, tomar una pastilla y luego una segunda pastilla 12 horas después. Pensé que podría ser algo que ella había conseguido para la ansiedad o los nervios, pero las instrucciones no tenían sentido. La receta estaba escrita a su nombre el lunes. Volví a poner el sobre en su lugar mientras ella terminaba de ducharse. Decidí que quería saber más sobre antes de contarle sobre ello. Por supuesto, si lo mencionaba, significaría que estaba revisando sus cosas. Odio los dilemas. Mientras Sara se preparaba para dormir, fui a nuestro ordenador doméstico y busqué. 10 minutos después, me uní a mi esposa bajo las sábanas. Pasé toda la noche despierto, preguntándome por qué mi esposa había recogido una receta para la píldora del día después, especialmente después de que me hicieran una vasectomía hace 10 años. A la mañana siguiente, me levanté temprano, pero no estaba descansado. Di un largo paseo, esperando que despejara mi mente. Me dirigí hacia casa con reticencia, temiendo lo que podría hacer o decir cuando llegara allí. Mi hijo Joe se unió a la Marina después de la escuela secundaria y estaba en su primer año en San Diego. Nuestra hija Gloria se casó con su amor de la infancia el año pasado y acababa de mudarse a Dallas. Eso dejaba solo a Sara y a mí. Echaba de menos a los niños, pero esperaba envejecer con mi esposa. Ella era la única mujer que me había interesado, y ahora todo estaba. Si Sara estaba teniendo una aventura, lo ocultaba bien. Por supuesto, nunca la vigilé. Nunca miré sus correos electrónicos o llamadas telefónicas. No tenía razones para hacerlo. No tenía forma de saber qué estaba haciendo en el trabajo o después del trabajo. Confiaba en ella completamente. Ion, ¿dónde demonios has estado? ¿Quieres huevos o algo? No, solo café. No me sentía con muchas ganas de hablar. ¿Qué pasa, cariño? Solo son 3 días. Puedes venir si quieres, pero te aburrirás como una ostra. No, realmente no quiero ir, pero odio dejarte sola. Me preocupo cuando no estás aquí. Es muy dulce, querido, pero estará bien. No voy a salir del hotel en todo este tiempo. Pasaré la mayor parte del día asegurándome de que la sala de conferencias esté lista, y esta noche tendré una agradable charla con nuestros posibles clientes. Mañana, probablemente ni siquiera tendré la oportunidad de ir al baño. Llegaré a casa lo más temprano posible el viernes. Te prometo un gran fin de semana si sabes a lo que me refiero. Todo eso suena bien, pero no puedes culparme por preocuparme. Soy un mecánico de autos, y tengo una esposa hermosa y exitosa. A veces tengo la sensación de que estás menos interesada en mejorar nuestra situación familiar que en avanzar en tu carrera. Detente, maldita sea, Ion. Siempre he respetado lo que haces para ganarte la vida y nunca he insinuado lo contrario. Criaste a 2 grandes niños y me pusiste a través de la universidad. Eres un gran esposo, un gran padre y un buen proveedor, y nunca olvides eso. Terminé mi café mientras ella recogía la mesa. ¿Quieres que te llame? No, no es una buena idea. Tendré el móvil apagado, y voy a apagar el teléfono de la habitación por la noche para poder dormir. Te llamaré siempre que pueda. La ayudé a cargar el coche, era tan meticulosa con eso como con todo lo demás. Trabajando, le llevaría 3 horas llegar al Hotel Dicen. Me quedé en el porche y la vi marcharse. No me molesté en preguntarle por las pastillas. Pasé el resto de la mañana en el porche. No recuerdo haberme preocupado tanto como ahora. Me sentía pequeño e insignificante. Me sentía fuera de mi liga. Era un tipo de pueblo con un trabajo mediocre y una esposa exitosa. Era una combinación equivocada. Debería haberlo notado antes. Me sentía estúpido. El mejor traje que tenía era una chaqueta azul y un par de pantalones. Al menos tenía algunas corbatas, aunque tenían 10 años de antigüedad. Acababa de terminar de vestirme cuando sonó el teléfono fijo. Oye, cariño, solo quería avisarte de que llegué bien. ¿Tuviste un buen viaje? Supongo que el tráfico no estaba demasiado denso. Estuvo bien. Te llamaré esta noche. Ahora tengo que irme. Estoy en la habitación 714, Sara. Puedo estar en casa de mis padres o en la de mis hermanos esta noche si quieres llamarme a mi móvil. De acuerdo. Suena el teléfono móvil. Te quiero, tengo que irme. Me tomé mi tiempo para llegar a Filadelfia. No fui directo al Listen, primero me detuve y compré un filete con queso. Prometí hacer una larga noche. No estaba seguro de qué iba a hacer. Estacioné en el garaje del hotel y simplemente esperé. Tarde o temprano, tenía que entrar en el hotel. Simplemente no podía decidir cuándo hacerlo. El sonido de mi teléfono celular me ayudó a tomar mi decisión. Ion, solo quería avisarte de que todo se ha arreglado. Ahora voy a bajar para encontrarme con algunas personas y cenar. No olvidaste nada, ¿verdad? No, todo está bien. Tengo todo en mi habitación para mañana. ¿Necesitas algo? No, Ion, relájate. Voy a apagar mi teléfono. Te llamaré mañana por la mañana. ¿De acuerdo? Ríe, diviértete. No es divertido, Ion, es trabajo. No parecía estar demasiado fuera de lugar. El vestíbulo, el restaurante y las salas de conferencias estaban llenos de gente, así que pude pasar desapercibido. Había un folleto pequeño y bonito que mostraba el diseño de todas las habitaciones del hotel. Me paseé por las diferentes habitaciones y me detuve en las paredes, mirando alrededor entre la multitud. No tenía ni idea de qué haría si Sara me veía. Lo averiguaría si y cuando eso sucediera. Encontré un tablero de eventos que enumeraba todas las habitaciones que estaban siendo utilizadas por los diversos grupos. Bixler Enterprises no tenía habitaciones disponibles para el miércoles por la noche. Esto me pareció interesante. Sara había dicho que no iba a salir del hotel, pero ahora no estaba tan seguro de eso. Había 3 comedores, familiar, informal y de alta cocina. A Sara no le gustaba mucho cenar con niños, así que fui primero al comedor informal. Solo me llevó 5 minutos asegurarme de que no estaba allí. Tuve mejor suerte en el salón gourmet, era una acogedora mesita encajada en la esquina, el tipo de mesa que la gente reserva para tener un encuentro privado. Sara llevaba un vestido de cóctel negro con un escote pronunciado y perlas, se veía elegante y su acompañante parecía apreciarlo. Conocía a algunas personas con las que trabajaba Sara, y él no era una de ellas. Me resultaba familiar, pero no había forma de que pudiera recordarlo. Había muchas sillas libres, así que no tuve problemas para cruzar la sala. Había velas y pequeños candelabros de cristal en las mesas. Apagué la mía y le dije al camarero que me molestaba por el glaucoma. Pedí el plato de pollo de siempre y me acomodé. El camarero me sirvió el café por tercera vez. Disculpe, el tipo en la mesa de enfrente me parece muy familiar. ¿Sabes quién es? Sí, ese es Malcolm Eugene Foote. Es miembro del Consejo Municipal, se espera que se postule para el Congreso en los próximos años. ¿Es esa su esposa con él? Es muy bonita. No, esta es la primera vez que la veo. Siempre usa esa mesa para señoras especiales, si me entiende. Simplemente le sonreí y pedí la cuenta. Nunca había visto a Sara tan sensual con un hombre antes. Parecía captar cada palabra que decía, como si fuera Dios o algo así. No estaban haciendo nada inapropiado, pero tampoco era platónico ni profesional. Cuando me fui, estaban terminando su segunda botella de vino. Ahora entendía por qué se había llevado su lencería elegante. Me acomodé en una esquina del vestíbulo para que no me vieran. 10 minutos después, salieron del restaurante. Ella le tomaba la mano mientras caminaban por el vestíbulo hacia el ascensor. Observé cuidadosamente los indicadores de piso. Que el ascensor se detuviera en el tercer piso era una buena señal, significaba que no lo había llevado a su habitación. Era una mala señal cuando el ascensor no llegaba al séptimo piso, significaba que ella fue a su habitación. Por si acaso me equivocaba en algo, me senté en el vestíbulo y observé el ascensor durante 1 hora. La gente entraba y salía, pero Sara no estaba entre ellos. Saqué mi maleta vacía del coche y me dirigí al mostrador de recepción. Aunque podía demostrar que era su esposo, me costó trabajo conseguir una tarjeta llave. Se dieron después de llamar a la habitación, pero nadie respondió. Finalmente, estaba en camino a la habitación 714 con la tarjeta llave. Ni siquiera encendí las luces al principio, simplemente me senté en la oscuridad de la habitación durante más de 1 hora. No fue difícil asegurarme de que no regresara a la habitación. Primero, empacé todas sus ropas y pertenencias personales. No dejé nada atrás. Revisé el paquete de Preven, todavía quedaban 10 pastillas en el tocador. De manera muy ordenada, estaban todos los artículos que necesitaría para su presentación al día siguiente. Comencé a llenar la maleta. Había 24 carpetas promocionales especialmente encuadernadas y otras 20 carpetas regulares, todas ellas fueron a la maleta. Un proyector digital fue lo siguiente, seguido de una computadora portátil. Tomé su bolso y su celular, que había dejado en la habitación. Todo lo que tenía consigo era un bolso de mano y probablemente un tubo de lápiz labial. Di una vuelta por la habitación tan cuidadosamente como lo hizo ella para asegurarme de no perder nada. Una vez satisfecho, dejé las llaves del coche y mi anillo de bodas en el tocador. Aparte de esos 2 objetos, la habitación estaba completamente vacía. El ascensor se dirigió directamente al estacionamiento, no tuve problemas para llevar 2 maletas, y 20 minutos después, estaba en la autopista rumbo al norte. Pasaban las 3 de la madrugada, no tenía idea de que había pasado tanto tiempo. 1 hora o 2 después, sonó mi teléfono celular, la identificación de llamadas mostraba el número del listen. ¿Ion? Sí, ¿dónde estás? Estaré en casa pronto. Eso fue todo lo que dije. Hubo silencio en el otro extremo de la línea. Los vendedores tienen un viejo dicho, el primero que habla pierde. Pareció una eternidad antes de que ella hablara. Ion, lo siento. No preguntó nada y simplemente colgó. Apagué mi teléfono, era obvio que había regresado a su habitación. Más tarde ese día, tenía que dar una presentación que salvaría a su empresa y le daría un ascenso. Metí las maletas en el desván del garaje. Sara nunca iba allí y nunca pensó en buscar algo allí. Por supuesto, en este punto, estoy bastante seguro de que no importaba. Primero, recogí todas mis ropas y pertenencias personales. La mayoría de los hombres tienen sus propias herramientas, generalmente es un requisito para el trabajo. Pasé por la tienda, cargué las mías en el Subaru y recogí mi último cheque de pago. Para entonces, los bancos ya estaban abiertos, no tuve que hacer ninguna manipulación financiera complicada. Simplemente retiré todo el dinero de mis cuentas. Almorcé en Hagerstown, Maryland. Tenía suficiente dinero para vivir durante unos años, pero sabía que estaría buscando trabajo muy pronto. Sara y yo éramos parecidos en eso de que a ambos nos encantaba trabajar. La voy a extrañar. Pasé un par de horas en las cuevas del Uray y alquilé una habitación cerca de Whitewell. No tenía idea de qué iba a hacer. Era sábado, y me encontré sentado en el acuario de Chattanooga, observando la naturaleza que nunca había visto antes. Pasé unas horas simplemente relajándome y decidí que era un buen lugar para estar. Compré un pase anual para el acuario y, para la hora de la cena, tenía un lugar donde quedarme. Era un remolque móvil en el parque, pero estaba amueblado y era económico. No necesitaba mucho. La primera cosa que haría el lunes por la mañana sería conseguir un trabajo. Un buen hombre de mantenimiento siempre puede conseguir un trabajo, especialmente si está dispuesto a trabajar duro. Podría permanecer discreto hasta que fuera el momento de renovar mi licencia de conducir o las etiquetas del coche, me preocuparé por eso cuando llegue el momento. El domingo por la tarde, llamé a Gloria. Me sentí obligado a informarle sobre lo que estaba sucediendo, pero Sara ya se lo había contado. Fue bastante franca con Gloria sobre lo que había pasado, dijo que había engañado, que la sorprendí, que me fui y que ella perdió su trabajo. Me sentí mal porque ella perdió su trabajo, pero ese era el precio que tenía que pagar. Le pedí a Gloria que le dijera a Josh lo que estaba sucediendo la próxima vez que hablara con él. También le dije que la llamaría aproximadamente una vez al mes para verificar cómo iban las cosas. No le dije dónde estaba. Para el mediodía del día siguiente, tenía un trabajo. En realidad, estaba a poca distancia del parque de remolques, con el Waffle House a mitad de camino. ¿Qué más podría querer un hombre? No sé cómo manejaron el papeleo, pero me estaban pagando $20 por hora sin hacer preguntas. Estaba feliz, y ellos también. Ni siquiera tendría que tocar el dinero que traje conmigo. Unos 2 meses después, Gloria me informó que Sara se había mudado de la casa y estaba viviendo con sus padres. Gloria no sabía nada más, pero estaba feliz de que estuviera estable y le estuviera yendo bien. Josh me llamó desde San Diego solo para informarme que iba a hacer un crucero. Era técnico en aviónica en un portaaviones, intentó explicar qué hacía exactamente, pero estaba más allá de mi comprensión. Nunca supe mucho sobre cosas técnicas. Ambos tuvieron cuidado de no decir nada malo sobre su madre, aprecié eso. Después de eso, todo siguió como siempre. Comencé a hablar con Gloria al menos semanalmente, Josh y yo comenzamos a enviar correos electrónicos regularmente. Gloria hablaba regularmente con Sara, pero decía muy poco sobre lo que estaba haciendo o dónde estaba. Nunca presenté la solicitud de divorcio, y parece que Sara tampoco lo hizo. Tengo una licencia de conducir de Tennessee y las etiquetas en el Subaru. Comencé a frecuentar un bar local un par de veces al mes y tuve encuentros casuales, 2 mujeres se alternaban como mis compañeras nocturnas regulares. No buscaban compromisos, y yo tampoco, parecía funcionar bien para todos nosotros. La vida era buena. Eso fue hace mucho tiempo, y gradualmente olvidé a Sara. Con el tiempo, el Subaru comenzó a darme problemas, había olvidado cuánto tiempo había pasado. Tenía más de 200,000 millas. Estaba reflexionando sobre esto con una jarra de cerveza un día cuando me di cuenta de que habían pasado casi 5 años desde que me fui de casa. Mantuve un contacto cercano con ambos hijos, Gloria ya tenía 2 hijos propios en este momento y quería que los visitara. Josh casi se casó con una mujer tailandesa, pero en el último momento, se negó. Por lo general, trabajaba 6 días a la semana y usaba el domingo para recuperarme del sábado por la noche, no había ninguna buena razón para que alguien llamara a la puerta de mi remolque a las 6 de la mañana de un viernes. Su grosería fue recompensada por un hombre medio desnudo abriendo la puerta, los calzoncillos del día son repugnantes, y la dama en la puerta, juzgando por la expresión en su rostro, estuvo de acuerdo conmigo. Ella apartó la mirada, pero su compañero no parecía impresionado. Norm habría usado pantalones, pero en un momento como este, los invitados me molestaron. Estamos buscando a John Terrell. No los conozco. Me llamo David Simmons, y esta es mi esposa Mara. Tenemos un problema y esperamos que nos puedas ayudar. Lo siento mucho, no trabajo a altas horas de la noche. Si necesitan algo relacionado con su auto, tendrán que ir a la tienda. Esto provocó varias miradas en blanco y finalmente una respuesta. No tiene nada que ver con tu trabajo, es más un problema personal. ¿Podemos entrar? El interior del remolque lucía desordenado, rara vez tenía invitados, así que rara vez lo limpiaba. Incluso mis novias insistían en que fuéramos a su lugar. Hagan como en su casa, déjenme ponerme los pantalones enseguida. Al entrar en el dormitorio, dejé la puerta abierta solo para mostrarles lo hospitalario que soy. También me puse una camisa. ¿Les gustaría tomar café? Solo tomará unos 10 minutos. Aparté algunas cosas del sofá para que pudieran sentarse, no hubo respuesta a la pregunta del café. Tenemos una hija adoptiva de 4 años y otra de 2 que necesita un trasplante de médula ósea, y esperamos que nos puedas ayudar. Estamos dispuestos a pagarte si es necesario. ¿Con mi médula ósea? No, queremos usarla y estamos dispuestos a compensarte por cualquier inconveniente. Creo que quieren comprarla. Estaba actuando como un listillo, y de repente me di cuenta de ello. Estas personas eran serias, tenían un problema real y estaban buscando ayuda. Lo siento mucho, no quise interrumpir. Por favor, continúen. Nuestra mejor oportunidad de encontrar un donante es un familiar cercano. Eres nuestra mejor esperanza. Mira esto. No quiero ser un grosero, pero creo que se equivocaron de persona. ¿Cuándo nació su hija? Cumplirá 5 años en julio. Marche Simmons habló por primera vez, y sonó sincera. Odio ser el portador de malas noticias, pero me hice una vasectomía hace 15 años. No hay forma de que pueda ser su padre. ¿Por qué tu nombre estaba en el certificado de nacimiento? No puedo responder eso, tal vez deberían preguntarle a su madre. Esa afirmación fue recibida con silencio. Sentí pena por estas personas, pero no sabía cómo ayudarles. ¿Cuál es el nombre de la madre? Sarah Lise Terrell. No encontraba las palabras. Tal vez no debería haber tomado esas malditas pastillas de ella, por supuesto, entonces esas personas no tendrían una hija en absoluto. Todo lo que pensaba que había superado el dolor, y aquí está de nuevo, viejos recuerdos de mi esposa teniendo relaciones sexuales con ese maldito político de Filadelfia. Estaba empezando a olvidarlo todo, y ahora estaba de vuelta. Maldita sea. Ahora entiendo y pido disculpas por mi grosería e insensibilidad. Haré todo lo que esté en mi poder para ayudarles. En primer lugar, porque no puede Sara hacerse un trasplante de médula ósea. Médicamente, no puede. ¿Por qué no? Es madre, tiene que ser una donante adecuada. Ella es una donante adecuada, pero está demasiado enferma. Los médicos se negaron siquiera a considerar utilizarla. ¿Enferma de qué? Está muriendo de insuficiencia hepática. Le quedan menos de 6 meses de vida. Esto no tiene sentido. Siempre ha estado perfectamente sana. Además, no creo que un hígado enfermo le impida donar médula ósea. El hospital no aceptará su firma en el formulario de consentimiento. ¿Estás diciendo que hay algo mal en su cabeza? Ambos me miraron en silencio, sabían la respuesta, pero no querían decirlo. En ese momento, no quería que se sintieran aún más incómodos. Hace 10 minutos, no me importaban, pero ahora sentía que tenía que protegerlos y ayudarlos. ¿Cómo sucedió esto? ¿Podría alguno de mis hijos ayudar? Quizás, pero pensamos que eras nuestra mejor esperanza. ¿Por qué no van tras su padre, su verdadero padre? Pensamos que eras tú. No tenemos ni idea de quién más podría ser. Sara no nos dijo nada sobre otro posible padre. De hecho, ella no estaba en condiciones de explicar nada, agregó Mara. Obtuvimos la mayoría de nuestra información de la agencia de adopción. Tuve que preparar café y hacer pis, permítanme un momento. Dejé a mis invitados sentados mientras preparaba el café. Solo tomó unos minutos. Mientras se preparaba, fui al baño, algo que necesitaba hacer urgentemente. Traté de ser discreto, ya había avergonzado lo suficiente a Mara. ¿Dónde viven? En Westchester, Pensilvania. Les haré una oferta. Si les digo quién es el verdadero padre de su hija, deben prometerme que lo perseguirán sin descanso hasta obtener lo que desean. ¿De qué estás hablando? El padre de su hija es un político prominente en Pensilvania. Por supuesto, negará todo y probablemente les proporcionará documentos legales para detener sus esfuerzos. Si acuerdan presionar lo suficiente para que él admita que la niña es suya, podrán avergonzarlo y obligarlo a hacerse un trasplante de médula ósea. Eso es lo que quieren, ¿verdad? Sí, claro, pero ¿cómo hacemos eso? No lo sé. Soy mecánico. Trabajo con metal para ganarme la vida. Creo que la mejor manera sería utilizar la televisión, la radio y los periódicos. Los políticos harán cualquier cosa para evitar una mala publicidad. ¿Tienen amigos que puedan ayudar? Bueno, ahora ambos estaban sonriendo. Debo haber dicho algo que les dio esperanza. Creo que podemos hacer esto. ¿Quién demonios es él? Malcolm Eugene Foote. Se postula para el Senado de los Estados Unidos. Apuesto a que hará cualquier cosa para evitar una mala publicidad. El café estaba listo, pero David y Marshall no podían esperar para llegar a casa. Antes de irse, les dije cómo ponerse en contacto con Gloria y Josh en caso de que los necesitaran. Estaba seguro de que ayudarían. También les pedí que me dijeran dónde estaba Sarah. Probablemente estaría en Pensacola antes de que ellos regresaran a Westchester. Me corté el pelo y compré una camisa nueva. Sarah era una tramposa que arruinó mi vida, pero aún así quería lucir bien cuando la viera. Era otro remolque, pero esta vez era un bonito doble nuevo. Allí estaba su Volvo con una llanta desinflada y un parabrisas roto. La mujer que abrió la puerta no era Sarah, parecía que la habían empapado fuerte y la habían dejado empapada. Tenía al menos 45, tal vez 50, y debió haber tenido una vida difícil. La falta de maquillaje no ayudaba y simplemente se veía horrible. No tuve la oportunidad de abrir la boca. Caray, si no es John Terrell. Nunca esperé verte aquí. Tuve que usar la vieja línea, me estás poniendo en desventaja. Sherry Hart. Pasa, entra. ¿Quieres una cerveza? No, pero gracias. Estoy aquí para ver a Sarah. Sherry cruzó la habitación y se detuvo en el buffet del comedor. Aquí está, John. Mírala todo lo que quieras. Su mano señalaba una urna de latón que estaba en el centro del buffet vacío. Supongo que llegué demasiado tarde. No me moví, solo me quedé mirando el contenedor frente a mí. ¿Puedo tomar una cerveza ahora? Sarah se mudó a Pensacola después de dar a su bebé en adopción. Compró el remolque con el dinero que recibió de Bixler Enterprises después de que la despidieron. Tenía una participación en las ganancias, 401k, y vacaciones y días de enfermedad. Eventualmente, consiguió un trabajo en una fábrica local de prendas de vestir donde trabajaba en el departamento de envíos. Allí fue donde conoció a Sherry. Sherry alquilaba una habitación de Sarah. Cada centavo que Sarah ganaba iba para el alcohol. Empezó con vino y gradualmente pasó a bebidas más fuertes, las más baratas. Eventualmente, perdió su trabajo debido a su alcoholismo y se vio obligada a usar sus ahorros. Nunca salió con nadie ni salió a ningún lado. Sherry se quedó con ella, pagó sus servicios públicos y compró alimentos que Sarah no comía. Le llevó más de 3 años quitarse la vida. Increíblemente, ella tenía un testamento y me dejó un doble remolque y un Volvo. Sherry explicó que Sarah estaba tan angustiada por lo que había hecho que simplemente se rindió. No intentó evitar el embarazo ni siquiera terminarlo. La adopción se había arreglado meses antes de que naciera el bebé. Nunca volvió a trabajar, excepto en los trabajos clandestinos que hacía mal. Sherry dijo que Sarah no parecía tener ambición ni propósito en la vida. Sara hablaba mucho de mí pero tenía miedo de intentar contactarme. Gloria le dio mi número, pero nunca me llamó. Era como si su aventura de una noche la hubiera lastimado más a ella que a mí. Estuve allí durante 2 semanas y luego vendí el remolque de Serry por $1 y obtuve $3,000 por el Volvo. 2 días después, estaba en Westchester visitando a mis nuevos amigos David y Marche. Malcolm Eugene Foot resistió al principio, pero David y Marche lo presionaron hasta que cedió. Insistió en pruebas de ADN, que demostraron que era el padre. Para salvar la cara, más o menos lo obligaron a someterse a un trasplante de médula ósea, que fue exitoso. La carrera política y la vida familiar de Malcolm no dejaron una impresión favorable. Su caída en las encuestas fue tan rápida que el partido lo reemplazó por otro candidato unos meses antes de las elecciones. Su esposa solicitó el divorcio y fue muy pública al respecto. Sara y yo estamos viajando ahora a Dallas para ver a Gloria y a mis nietos. No sé cuánto tiempo mantendré a Sara conmigo, probablemente hasta que tenga a alguien.